everything done today. John, how do you want to do it logistically? Do you want to take breaks when the group says take breaks, or do you want to take a full hour at lunch, or how do you want to do that? And you're on mute.
Let me unmute. Okay, so I don't think we want to take a full hour at lunch, but I'll leave it to you to kind of gauge the folks as they're
Okay.
listening, and if they start to lag off, we'll jump into a break. But otherwise,
Okay.
I think we're here to learn.
Good. Good. And I'm glad. And I appreciate the setup, and everything that John said is absolutely true. Research should guide our decision making as an industry. But let me say it secondly, research does not guide us as our industry. There is so much research out there. I have research from 9 o'clock last night that I can't wait to tell you about now. It is a little bit of self-serving research because my company, Watercrest Senior Living, based out of Vero Beach, Florida, I'm the vice president of sales there. That company we just published our year-end statistics for 2023, and they were fantastic. They were the best in the history of the company, and I can't wait to share that with you, not to brag, but to hopefully give you a little bit more confidence to say, you know, this hillbilly from Kentucky, we really should listen to him because you're not listening to me, you're listening to the research and the results. Let me give you a little bit of a biographical background just to get us kicked off. It's the least favorite thing to talk about, I promise, as myself. I want to talk about you guys and talk about problems that you have, but I think it's fair that we level the playing field by me sharing a little bit about where I come from. In October of last year, I hit my 29th year of working in the senior living industry. I found out pretty quickly that I am old enough to become a resident in all 50 states. So, you know, there's that. There's my retirement plan right there. I've been doing this for a long, long time. Started with a company called Hillhaven, which none of you've ever heard of because nobody's old enough to have heard of Hillhaven. But it was a Tacoma, Washington-based company, and I came on as a community relations director, and so I was a salesperson. I immediately moved up to a regional salesperson. I became vice president of sales at Brookdale. You may have heard of them, a little bit of a large company in our industry. I was also vice president of sales at Atria, who is now the largest provider of senior living services in the world, and they're based here in Louisville, Kentucky. But then I decided I really wanted to be a trainer. I've always wanted to be a teacher at heart, and that's what my gift from God, I believe, is to be a teacher. And I started marrying the two, and I realized this is what I want to do. So for the rest of my career, this is what I do. I teach, I train, I look at research, and then I say, how can this help us serve more customers? Because I don't know why you got into this industry. I'd love to know that, by the way. But I got into it because I realized if I'm going to work this hard for a career, I want to do something that's going to have the largest impact on people. And I believe that senior living has the largest impact on people. In 1994, I was at a conference with a guy named John Maxwell. Anybody know John Maxwell? Anybody heard of him? Yeah, he's kind of famous. He's published about a gazillion books on leadership. But he's also a Baptist preacher. So whoop, give it up for the Baptists. Oh, I'm so glad I'm talking to Texas today. That line did not go so well in New York yesterday. But I was at a conference and he spoke and he said, you know, there's only 5 big decisions, or the 5 biggest decisions we're going to make in our lives are we're going to marry, what career we're going to choose, children or no children, our relationship with God. I mean, he is a Baptist preacher after all. And then he said, and how we're going to treat our seniors in their later years. And I thought, what doesn't fit into that sentence? I was relatively new in the senior living industry. But from that day on, I realized, wow, this is big what we do. It's big what we do when we do it successfully. I would argue that it's really big what we do when we do it unsuccessfully as well, because the media gives us no quarter whatsoever. The media is not our friend. I mean, you have people that walk into your homes all the time. And what do they think they're going to experience when they come into a torch home? And I'm sorry, I'll say community all day long because that's my preferred word, but you call it what you want to call it. Just please don't call it a property, a facility, or a building. Please don't do that. But we all know that they walk in there thinking, well, this is Some people even think this is where COVID started. Does anybody know? In fact, let's see just if we can chat. Oh, it won't be this bad all day, I promise. I just have to get warmed up. Everybody go to the chat feature, if you will. Can anybody tell me what state the first senior living-based COVID case was found? It was all over the news, and it was found in one of our states. Derek, you must have been to my training before. Oh, John, you must have listened before. It was in a little town called Kirkland, Washington, and it was a skilled nursing community. And that used to be my community. I was their regional for about 3 years, and I knew people that worked there. Obviously, they didn't work there anymore. That was the many years before that. But when I saw how the news portrayed what was happening in that community, I thought, uh-oh. But then humanistically, I thought, oh, my goodness, those poor people, and immediately started praying for those families out there. Well, I do a lot of focus groups, too, as a consultant in this industry. And so, sorry, I started off by saying I'm the vice president of sales at Watercrest, and I am, and I've been there for 3 years now. But I'm also the president of the Marlow group. And this is what you're getting today. You're getting a blend of that. You'll get some Watercrest information, but you'll also get some Marlow group information. But when I thought about that community up there, and I thought about how that was portrayed, I thought, we're in trouble as an industry. And I believe that we are in trouble. And I ask groups all the time when I'm face to face with them, how's business? What's the state of the union of senior living? And almost every time, and I had 41 different in-person speaking engagements last year, 41 times I spoke at different conferences. I asked that question. And at least 37, 38 of the times, people would say, well, it's great. It's going great. And then I look back at the research and I said, you know what? It's not going great. Our industry is in the biggest crisis it's ever been in the 57 years that we've been even called an industry. And we're going to talk about what can we do to allay some of those crises moments that we're seeing. Some of them self-inflicted. You got to own it. Some of them are self-inflicted. But there is a better way. Now, are we going to be able to fight the big media? No, we're going to lose that battle every single time. I mean, Taylor Swift owns the media right now, right? But maybe that's it. Maybe we need to go through Taylor. Sorry, just a thought I had. Go Chiefs. But we do have to still share that information with our customers, the right story, because what the media says about you is not correct. And I'm going to talk about this again in a minute. What the media says about our industry is not correct. Forbes magazine called us the most underperforming industry in the United States. I didn't take that criticism well because it was unfounded. It was not factually produced. So our job, our mission today, if we choose to take it, is we have to educate our customers as to who we are and what we do and what their life can truly be like if they choose to move into one of our communities. And again, folks, we're going to get into this, and every one of those topics, we're going to get into it, and we're going to get into it very deep. John's not wrong when he says that I go fast, and I do, but you must make this interactive as possible. The chat feature is always there. I'll be looking for hands to raise. Please talk to me, because hearing my voice for the next 5 hours sounds like torture. It does. I want to hear your voices too. And there's several times I will intentionally stop and get some feedback from me, but please know I'm the most informal trainer you'll ever meet. Interrupt me, throw something at me, raise your hand, put it in a chat, and I promise you I'll keep looking for that too. John also made the funny point too. Oh, let me say one more thing before we move off of that. So all of this 29 years has certainly evangelized my presentation. I feel so strongly about this. This is my 1,004th time to make this presentation, by the way. Not that I count, but I count. So I've presented this material in different venues, 1 hour segments, 5 hour segments, 2.5 day segments, which, by the way, we're going to be offering a 2.5 day training program like this in beautiful Orlando, Florida, hopefully by the end of this year. And you guys will be invited. You will. It's an immersive 2.5 days with me and some of the smart people in our industry. And we'll be offering that to the industry too. And we're really looking forward to that as well. But what really kind of got my evangelical juices flowing was when I shopped for senior living. My mother needed senior living, so I started shopping, and I thought I knew what I was doing, and I do. But what I found out is the communities that I went to, they didn't know what they were doing. And you'll hear that story a little bit later on today also. My mother did move into a community. She was excited. Hear that word. She was excited to move into the community that she did move into. But the other 10 communities that we visited, it was a terrible experience. And my mother was very, very cognizant of that. Of course, I was very cognizant of that because it was my mother. And it was a very personal decision, too. So 29 years, lots of presentations, lots of interactions with really smart people. And then I became a consumer. You're going to get all of that today. So as John said, buckle up because we've got a lot to cover. And John also said, too, that name of our class. Oh, John, can I share my screen? I'm assuming. Yes?
Yeah, you're the co-host, so you should be able to share.
Sorry, guys. I should have done that a while back. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yep. Good. Whoa. Security alert. Security alert. What does that mean? Okay, whatever. We probably just, blew up the Zoom system, but whatever. So it'll work out fine. So anybody that's been through my training, shoot, I can't see the chat feature. I can just see your smiling faces, which is good, but I'd like to see the chat feature also. Anybody that can see the screen knows I have a big old stripe through the word tour because that's one of our bad words today. Can anybody tell me what the right word is? John gave you a hint.
Experience.
Oh, I love it. Who said that?
Jenna.
Jenna?
Uh-huh.
Hey, Jenna. I was
Hey,
going to say, Jenna, you need to know, I need to know your name because we're giving out prizes, but we're not. So I just needed to know your name. How about that?
You can't throw candy at me this time.
You were in that group, huh? All right. So I got to get Chad up here. I got to get them both up here. I'll work on that. So you guys, I don't have Chad up right now, so you're just going to have to say, hey, Mike, and we'll stop and we'll do that. So we get rid of the word tour and we put in the word experience. And a lot of people will say to me, oh, well, that's cute, blah, 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 blah. That is the most important message you will get today. It is the most important message. So John encouraged you to take notes. I'm going to beg you to take notes because I'm going to go fast and furious, as he said before. By the way, if you've been through my training before, there's going to be lots of new stuff today also, especially toward the end of the day today. So please take lots of notes and ask lots of questions. But what do we replace tours with? This experience. And those of you taking notes, I want you to put some qualifiers to that word experience because the experiences we create with our customers need to be meaningful, memorable, unique experiences. And I'll explain why each of those words matters in just a moment. Meaningful, memorable, and unique experiences for our customers. Now, those are not just words. That is the creation of a sales culture in your homes. That's the creation of a different mindset. That's the creation of being something that I have called sales-centered. Sales-centered is what I have used for the last many, many years. It's the name of my training program. It's the name of the philosophy that I use, my approach, my mindset, my culture. Sales-centered in the senior living industry seems a little bit self-serving. But think about it this way. Shouldn't it be service-centered or resident-centered or care-centered? And the answer is absolutely yes. But if we don't sell them, we can't serve them. So sales has to come first in our mindset, in our cultures, in our approaches, because if we don't sell them, guess where they're going to be? They're going to be living in their own homes, and that's our greatest competitor that we will ever have. Always has been, always will be. People living in homes in substandard situations. Let me give you statistic number one. Right now, we take care of about 9.7% of the senior population. Even for a period in their lifetime, we only take care of less than 10% of seniors. And that number has really not changed in the last 30 years. It's gone up a little bit, but not much. Research says that we should be taking care of 19% of all seniors right now. And this was a study that was done by ACA, American Healthcare Association. And ACA said, if we use quality of life as our number one factor, and that's a pretty good factor, quality of life, it's kind of all encompassing. 19% of seniors should be living with us instead of where they live now. And where do they live now? They live in their own homes, and they live in substandard situations in many, many of those cases. Let me reference you to, or let me point you to another body of research, which is mind-blowing research. It's done by UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, and it's easy to Google, and there's a ton of information in there. So look for the executive summary. I think it's called maybe the abstract. I can't remember, but you'll find it. And it's called the Loneliness Study. And it's been a multi-year study that just talks about people who live in community, and we use the word community as a verb there, versus people who live alone in their homes. And again, your greatest competitor is people living in their homes, almost always alone, not always, but usually alone. That's who you compete with, because there's plenty of seniors for every senior. Yet they're not even close. We're not even half of what we should be, according to ACA. I am so sorry, guys. I have got the itchiest eye going on here. That's very unprofessional. Sorry about that. So we have to change our approach. We have to become much more sales centered. We have to create a meaningful, memorable, unique experience for them. You should never, and I hope you write this down, I hope you have it tattooed on your body. You should never give a generic tour the rest of your life, the rest of your career. Tours are out, because a generic tour sends a message to a customer, and that message is the one size fits all here at Torch, and we know that's not true. Everybody gets a customized treatment plan. Everybody gets a customized experience once they're in the community. What I'm saying to you, we should start that individualized experience before they choose your Torch home. And if we do that before they start it, when they're shopping, you will have the greatest competitive advantage that you could ever have. So creating those meaningful, memorable, unique experiences aren't words. They're our lifeline to the future success. And I'm going to give you every tool imaginable to make that happen in your communities. Let's go ahead and wrap up the whole terminology piece too, because tour is out, experience is in. We also should never talk about rooms or units. And again, you guys may have very different opinions on this, and it may also be Torch policy that you use certain words. One of my clients that I work with a lot, they use rooms, and they want to keep rooms. And I keep telling them, I said, it's not the right thing to do, but it's okay. And when I say it's not the right thing to do, it's because I also lead focus groups with seniors, and they hate that word room. They definitely hate that word unit. Who wants to live in a unit the rest of their lives? What they do like, what appeals to them the most, is the word apartment. They can understand that. Apartment, that sounds very customer friendly. So apartments are in, rooms and definitely units are out. Property, buildings, and facilities. Please strike those words from your vernacular, please. They want to live in community. You can tell me, guys, because I can't remember for sure. Do you prefer home, or do you prefer community, or do you prefer? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I say home or house.
Hey, those are great. Anybody else?
Community.
Community. So no facility. Oh, I do see a chat up there. It popped up on my screen. Don't know why. Lisa says both. Okay. Maybe I can put that over here on the left-hand side. Ooh, this will be interesting. So as long as we agree not to use property, building, facility, think about this. I'm going to give you a tour of our facility and look for an appropriate unit for you. How customer friendly does that sound? How exciting does that sound? Derek says residence. I think residence is great. That's fine. I'm not sure they would understand that word as much as we need to make this as simple and as comfortable for them as possible. So I still think apartment is the way to go, but I'm not at all concerned about home. I just want to stay away from the facility and all of those things. And before we get too far, guys, Happy New Year. Can you believe it's the end of January already? 1/12 of the year is already over. I do have my chat up now, so we're good to go. So I can chat and I can see your faces. I can see who's chewing on a pen. I can see who's falling asleep. Nobody yet. Woo! Hey, yay me. So again, no tours. We're done. We're done with tours. Let me ask you another question, and this is where let's try chatting now, and then we'll see if we like chatting better than just talking. But you can do either at any time, I promise. How many families do you have in your lead bank right now? Whatever, if you use 3.5 by 5 car index cards, or if you use Yardi or some other fancy CRM, how many families do you have in your lead bank right now? Just a curiosity question. Go ahead and chat with me if you would. When I finish my McDonald's Diet Coke, I'll stop coughing quite so much. Cold drinks make me cough, but it also keeps my throat ready to go. So aren't you loving hearing all my health issues? Okay, nobody's chatting. Chat, chat, chat. How many families do you have in your lead bank? Okay, I've got 75. I'm too vain to put my glasses on, so I'll just squint and lean. Oh, come on. We've got 13 people on board. I want 13 answers. With 2 homes, about 40. Awesome. Thank you, Jenna. Chocolate for you.
19.
At 4 homes, 100.
19 with 2 homes.
I need to. Okay. All right, keep going. I want to hear from everybody. I want everybody to get comfortable with chatting, just so we can keep this as interactive as Zoom allows us to be. I would love to have been there with you guys, by the way, today. Could have put me behind, sneeze guards, and I wouldn't have infected anybody, I promise. Okay, that looks like all we're going to get. What was the question again? I appreciate that. How many families are in your lead bank? How many inquiries or leads or whatever you want to call them? Belinda says 4. The average big box, and keep chatting, the average big box senior living community has approximately 375 families in there, but it really doesn't matter what the number is. 100, 4, 25, whatever your number is. Do you ever wonder, well, why are they still in my lead bank? And why aren't they living at my Torch home? Why haven't they done that yet? Oh, okay. Why haven't they done that? By the way, research tells us that they're also in 88% of the people in your lead bank are also in another senior living community lead bank. Most of them are in 4 lead banks. That's the average for people. So they go, they shop, they inquire, they give their contact information, and then what do? They go right back home and they lead their substandard lives. So when I'm asked to speak at a conference or asked to do any training at all, I always find out, what do you want from me? Do you want me to talk about how to generate leads? Because if you do, I am not the right person to do that. I'm not. That's marketing. That's not my area. We have enough leads in our industry. You have enough leads in your homes. For the most part, we certainly could always use more leads, but for the most part, we have enough leads. Lead generation is not the problem of senior living. Our problem in senior living, it can be said in one word, and that is conversion. We should be converting these people at a much higher rate. And that's why I'm so excited to share our year-end statistics at Watercrest, my company, just a couple of moments, because our conversion rates are through the roof. And I hope that you say, well, how did he do that? Because that's what we're going to talk about for the next 4.5 hours. How do we actually do that? So why don't they move into our communities? Why don't they move into our homes? My focus groups tells me that there's 2 reasons that they're not moving into senior living. Number 1 is trust. They don't trust us. We're an untrustworthy organization. In fact, they rank organizations on their level of trust. I can't tell you exactly where we rank because I can't remember, but it was way, way low. We were way low on the list. We're not trustworthy. And I believe that is absolutely nothing that we have done. I think that's the media's portrayal of us. Do you ever think about how the media portrays us? When do we make the news? Let's list the reasons. An elopement, an allegation of abuse. One of our communities that's locally based here in Louisville called Trilogy. They have been all over the national news lately for not providing enough care. In fact, a lot of people think that President Biden's initiative to increase the minimum staffing rates in skilled nursing communities came from that trilogy report. I don't know if that's true or not. Probably had a factor in it though, because it was all over the news. It continues to be in the news, at least locally here. We do have some problems. We do, and we're addressing them as well as we possibly can. But what the media is saying about us is not true. So I speak at a lot of national conferences. I speak at the biggest national conferences, AHCA, American Healthcare Association. I got to speak there. And I asked the executive director, the CEO, I said, why in the world don't you put out a press release that says how we're portrayed in the media is not correct? Statistically, here's how we actually performed during COVID. I think that would go a long way to building trust with our customers. And that's the number one reason they tell me they won't move into our communities. They don't trust us. So AHCA's not doing that for us. Leading Age is not doing that for us. I don't know what Torch is doing on a statewide basis. I hope you're putting out information. So if these folks aren't going to do this for us, how are we going to get this information to our customers? We're going to tell them one-on-one. And that's the most inefficient way in which to tell the story. But it's also the way that we're going to tell them the story. So you're going to take a quiz in a few moments, and that quiz is going to give you some information, some insights into some areas of senior living research that you may not know about. And if you go, wow, that's an interesting statistic, but you don't do anything with it, we just wasted a lot of time. In other words, you should take that statistic and go, I want the research behind that. Email me. I send you that research, and you share it with your customers. Next thing you know, your customers are going, well, maybe I should trust this community because I had no idea these are the facts about senior living. So the number one word that comes up every time is, I don't trust you. Number two is, I fear you. Those words have been the same top two words from our focus groups nationally for 5 straight years now. Fear and distrust. Well, those are tough words to overcome. So we've talked a little bit about the trust piece. What do you think they fear about living in a community like ours? And let me just give you the real simple answer because it's 5 letters. 5 letters. COVID. They still think that we're ridden with COVID. Now, I work mainly in Florida. My company is based in Florida, and most of our communities are in Florida. We're having a little bit of an outbreak now. So is COVID still around in senior living? Absolutely. But is it what it was in 20 and 21? No, it's not that. But our customers think it is because that's what they know. And nobody's telling them anything different. So we must, as I'm getting over COVID, I'm sitting here telling you, we should tell them that we do a great job at managing COVID. And we do. But those are the 2 big factors that we're going to be facing moving forward and we'll continue to face. So today we're going to call this, we're going to rename it the Torch Experience School. And we're going to talk about that for quite a long time. Now, I'm going to ask you guys for a big commitment today. And that commitment is to, what was the number 2 pre-COVID? I'm not sure I understand that, Derek. What was number 2 pre-COVID? Can you ask that question verbally? It was trust. They don't trust us and they fear us.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I guess.
Was that it?
Number one was trust, but COVID is relatively recent. So what was number 2?
Yeah, and COVID actually, they expressed the word COVID as fear. And so we drill down with each one of these participants, and there's usually about 80 seniors that we have in our focus groups. And when we drill that down, it almost always ends up at COVID. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to ask, pre-COVID, what was there a number 2, a steady number 2 before COVID existed to us?
It changed every year, Derek. That's a great question that I don't have an answer for. It changed every year. It's just the last 5 years it has been those 2 words that have bubbled up. I don't know if you've ever seen it or not, but when a person uses a word or a phrase, it's populated onto a map and the font of the letters get larger. That's how we do our focus groups. And the 2 largest words by font, trust has always been the largest for the last 5 years. And then fear has been the second largest. And then we talk to them about what do those words actually mean. And that's where we come up with that. I can't remember what it was pre-COVID though, but that's a good question. You're going to make me have to do some research after today. But fear and trust are the two areas that we really need to work on. And trust trumps fear. Trust is the biggest thing that we're going to have to face. And we're going to have to face that for a lifetime. Our industry is always going to have some trust issues out there too. I mean, think about us historically. You know, no one wants to put mama in the home. You know, think about all the backlash that adult daughters especially would get when they would move their mother into a senior living community or a nursing home, as we're always called. All of those things are what we face. It's that uphill battle that we face every single day. So historically, we have not been perceived as very trustworthy, as a desirable location, even though we all know lives improve every single day when they move into a torch community. But we have to share that information with our customers. To do that, you've got to be a great salesperson. Salesperson, not marketing. And it drives me crazy when we talk about our marketing efforts in senior living. I'm going to go out and do some marketing today with some doctors and some agencies on aging. You're not marketing, you're selling. And everybody knows that you're selling. We might as well call it selling, because this is a sales training program. And it took me a long time to be proud to be a salesperson, but I finally figured out I'm really proud to be a salesperson. And when it's done well, when it's done extraordinarily well, it's a very fulfilling experience that we have with our customers. Let me read something to you about experiences and about being an extraordinary salesperson. This is one of my favorite articles. It was published in April of last year. I have to get my glasses on, sorry. And this came from a website called Senior Living Foresight. It's pretty long. Senior Living Foresight, all one word. It's seniorlivingforesight.org, I think. It might be .com. But the gentleman that runs it is a guy named Steve Moran, M-O-R-A-N. I have no financial stake in that website. Steve sometimes gets a little bit crazy in some of his editorials, but it's also a good repository for some really smart thinkers in the senior living industry. And this particular little message that I'm getting ready to share with you came from that website. So you might want to subscribe. It's legit. You'll get messages every day from them, but there's some really good content, and not just in sales, but in culinary and wellness and labor, you name it, it's all in there. So you might want to check that out. But the title of this article was, "You can be extraordinary or ordinary, but you can't be both." This seems to be an extraordinarily hard concept for some senior living providers, even today. And because of the pandemic, there's that word again, it will make the difference between fabulously successful, that is economically profitable, and all the while making the world a better place for residents, families, and team members. Or you can be ordinary. You choose. But our brains and our customers' brains are simply not wired to purchase or to crave the ordinary. Coming out of COVID, you can try going back to the same old way of doing things, assuming that demographics will take care of the occupancy. I promise it won't. No matter how massive the upcoming age wave will be, it will not be enough to fill the ordinary communities that exist today. You must be extraordinary. If you're counting on demographics to make it all better, you're going to fall off a cliff. And here are some things we know from our focus groups. These aren't my focus groups. This is the author's focus groups. I agree with every word of it, though. Selling care and security will not get your community full any longer. Residents want a remarkable experience. There's our word. Residents want a remarkable experience-filled life. And this begins before they even move into your community. They want to live those experiences with other people, both older and younger. And they will move into your communities because we create with them, not just for them, powerful, meaningful experiences. And the experience is everything to our customers. The author goes on to say, who wants to be extraordinary? And I would love to ask that. If I was in person, I would ask that, and you would maybe slowly put your hand up because you think that's what I want you to say. I definitely want you to be extraordinary. And today you're going to have all the tools that it takes to be extraordinary. But the author goes on and said, who's willing to commit to being extraordinary? I am. Watch it. It takes a great deal of discipline, sacrifice, and intentionality. If my years in senior living have taught me anything, this approach is only governed by two words, time and if. Time means that you have to change over time the approach that you take to fill your community. But if is the bigger question. You have to choose if you are willing and committed to be extraordinary. And if you are, you have an opportunity for excellence. If you are, you will be full. And I love how the author ends that, because what we're going to talk about today, guys, I promise you, no jokes here. I promise you, if you execute on a disciplined basis, consistently execute what we're going to talk about today, your home's going to be full. I've seen it thousands, literally, of times. It's just when trainings are over and people go back to doing the same old, they don't get full and they get frustrated. They go, I went to a training. I listened to the speaker. We're still 70% occupied. That's because of the lack of execution, because this stuff works. Does it work with every single customer? Of course not. Nothing does. But it works with the vast majority of customers, and you're going to find yourself increasing your occupancy and revenue very quickly if you're willing to commit to being extraordinary. And why not? It's the only way that we can really survive in this industry. Definitely thrive in the industry, because again, business is not good right now. So let me share the most important slide of the entire day. This is it. And by the way, I am happy to share this PowerPoint with anybody post Zoom today. I have no secrets. Anything that I talk about is fair game. I'm not smart enough to have trademarked it and kept it for myself. I want everybody to hear this. But this is the central message for you today, and you'll see it at least 2 more times today. We must give our customers a glimpse into what their life could look like in your community by creating, here we go, meaningful, memorable, and unique experiences for our residents and their family members. And that must start while they are still considering your community. On average, families visit 4 communities, as we talked about before. They choose one, and that one that they choose out of the 4 is the one that has given them the most meaningful, memorable, and unique experience of all. Every single time when I talk to families after they've made their senior living buying decision, and I really drill down on why'd you choose that community, it's always because the experience there gave them a glimpse into what their life could truly look like at a community. And it just blows their mind, because they thought, this is not what I expected. Their expectations for us are so low. And if we give them a generic tour, we've met that low expectation. But if we create a meaningful, memorable, and unique experience for them, we've blown their minds. We have shown them, this is what my life could be like. Sign me up. And our conversion rates go through the roof. And I want you to keep thinking about that word conversion rate, because we convert right now 1 out of every 10 families who contacts us. 1 out of 10. That is horrific. That is self-inflicted. That is unacceptable. Research says we should convert 1 out of every 2. And after today, you're going to know exactly how you can do that. There we go. So look at the central question for today. Upon what is that glimpse of the meaningful, memorable, and unique experience based? So we're to create a meaningful, memorable, and unique experience for the customer before they ever choose our community, while they're considering our community. But what do we base that meaningful, memorable, and unique experience on? What are your thoughts? What do we base it on?
Their wants and needs.
Who said that?
I did.
Was that Jenna?
Martha.
Martha, that's a great answer. Let me change it slightly. But what they want and need is true. And Lisa says on the prospective resident, and that's sort of true, Lisa. But it really is not on the prospective resident. It's on the family. Remember, you are selling as much to the family now as you are to the prospective resident. 87% of all senior living buying decisions are made by adult children. Did you hear that? Did you write it down? Because if you don't, if you do hear that and write it down and make it part of your approach, that changes the way that you approach a family. When the family comes, you've got to look at that adult daughter as just as much of a customer as that prospective resident is also. So let me answer my question. Upon what is that glimpse? Upon what is the glimpse of the meaningful, memorable, and unique experience based? I think it's based on their entire story. You have to know their entire story, and that takes a lot of time. And we're going to talk about time in just a couple of moments. And once we've invested that time and we understand the family there, the dynamics of that family, the urgency of that family, the nuances of that family, let's face it, weird things about that family. Sometimes we feel like we're therapists and we go, oh my goodness, I can't believe they're talking about that in front of me. That's what you want, because when you know them holistically, then you can present your home to them holistically. And it just went from a tour to a meaningful, memorable, and unique experience. That's where we're going, guys. And again, all the tools that are necessary will be yours by today. Hey, happy National Hot Chocolate Day. You guys probably don't need that in Texas. What's the temperature there today? What is it there? Come on,
It's
you got to
only
talk to me.
64, so I wouldn't mind some hot chocolate.
Oh, 64. I woke up to 24 this morning, so I don't want to hear it. We're actually going to get to 60 this weekend. We are pumped. We're going to get to 60, and there's a rumor we might have some sun. I don't know if that's true or not. Let me also take a moment, too, to talk about how you guys are heroic. Every single bipolar LOL, but will be hot later today. 54, okay, good. Those are great temperatures for me. But we are heading in the right direction anyway. I want to take a moment before we get into the meat of this presentation, too. Again, thank you for what you do. I'd love to hear why each one of you chose to be in the senior living industry. I can't imagine being in any other industry, but you are heroic. And I do live in Kentucky. As I said, I married a Kentucky girl, so she makes me live in Kentucky. I'm actually a native of Alaska, so I would much prefer to live. And it was 35 below last night in my hometown, by the way, in Fairbanks, Alaska. So maybe I don't want to live there right now. But I live in Kentucky. And here in Kentucky, we have a governor named Andy Beshear. He might be your president someday, so remember that name. And Governor Beshear, for 18 months during COVID, he asked all of us Kentuckians to step out on our front porches at 10 a.m. every morning and just clap into the wind. Just stand on our front porches and clap every day for 18 months. You want to guess who we were clapping for? He asked us to clap specifically for hospital workers. And I did it because both of my children are hospital workers. I have a PT and an OT. So I've got therapy all around me, which is great because I'm not getting any younger. They are heroes to me. But it always bugged me when Governor Beshear never said, hey, let's step out on our front porches and clap for the heroes who work in senior living. Nobody clapped for you. In fact, there's a lot of research out there that people think that COVID started in senior living because Lester Holt from NBC News showed pictures in Kirkland, Washington, video of them carrying bags with bodies inside of it out of that senior living community in Kirkland, Washington. Do you think that image was fried in people's brains? Of course it was. Did we have deaths from COVID in senior living? Of course we did. But here's the statistic that will remind you how heroic you are in what you do. Do you know that senior living, by research, was proven to have saved more lives than acute care hospitals did in total? Did you know that? Do your customers know that? Customers should know that. That research says senior living saved more lives from a primary COVID death than acute care hospitals did. That's amazing. Acute care hospitals were seen as the heroes. Yay, clap, clap, clap. And senior living was seen as, you started this. You caused this. Even if you didn't start and cause it, you exasperated the problem. It's not true. It's never been true. Yet that's what we have to fight. And we wonder why our customers say, I fear and distrust you. It's because of what the media has portrayed us as. I'm here, and nobody else may ever say this to you. Thank you for being heroes in the storm. Unfortunately, the storm's not over. In our customers' minds, we still have stormy days ahead of us. And that's okay, because we're going to share the new information with them, and we're going to create those intimate one-on-one relationships that allows us to share research with them that tells the true story about who we are and what we've done. So thank you for what you've done before we get into this. And I don't know why this picture got in there, but that may or may not be my latest grandchild. I don't know. I don't know how that got in there. John must have slipped that in there when I wasn't looking. So now, again, that's just unprofessional to have two pictures of your granddaughter in there. So we'll move right along. Yeah, she didn't like Santa very much this year. Let me just say. I have 4 grandchildren, guys, but this one gets a lot of airtime because she lives here in Louisville. So I see her an awful lot. So, and I'll just wait and hear the oohs and ahs, and I'll wait. Okay, all right, we'll move on. So our customers truly are dazed and confused. They really don't understand our product. Thank you, John, for the awe. I appreciate that very much. So we do know our customers are dazed and confused. Who's going to undaze them and unconfuse them? We are. And if we don't, they will remain dazed and confused. I only lead focus groups twice a year, and I always wish I did it every month, because I'm always going, someday they're going to get out of this. Someday they're going to understand our industry. Someday they're going to trust us. Someday they're not going to be afraid of us anymore. I don't think that'll happen in my career. I don't. I think we're years, maybe decades away from that happening. But when I look at how it's going to happen, it's not going to happen through any of our national organizations. It's not going to happen through our state organization. It's going to happen one-on-one. So if you don't share some of the data that we're going to talk about today with your customers, we've got another miss. And we've just retarded that time that eventually will come when people say, I understand senior living. I understand where it fits in the healthcare continuum, and I'm not afraid, and I trust those folks. But that's only going to become from one person at a time. And I have a real hero in this industry too. Her name is Jennifer Witten, and Jennifer's the Chief Operating Officer at Heritage Ministries in New York, one of my other clients I work with a lot in my consulting group. She said something about a year ago, and this was closer to the pandemic than we are now. But somebody said, what's the difference between selling now and selling during the pandemic? And she said this, and I'm going to read it to you. Nothing's changed at all. We still need to sell one relationship at a time. I love the simplicity of that, but it reminded us that selling is relationship based. So what you're going to get today is you're going to get 2 trainings in one. The majority of the day, we're going to talk about selling behaviors. How do we behave with the customer to build trust and to lessen fears from our customer? Because that's what they're telling us, how they feel about our industry right now. Probably the last hour, I'll probably sound like a schoolgirl by then. My voice will be all high and it'll be nasty, but hang in there with me. We're going to talk about the sales process. How do we actually lead an experience? What are the nuts and bolts of doing that? That's not my favorite part to teach, so we're going to focus more on the selling behaviors, but I promise you at the end of the day, you're also going to have a new approach to somebody just walked into your home and it's time to lead them on that meaningful, memorable, unique experience. How do I do that? We're going to talk about that today in the last time that we're together. My company, Watercrest, we're at 29 straight months of meeting our move-in budget. I want you to think about that for a moment. 29 months is longer than 2 years. 2 years, that was during COVID also. For 29 straight months, we have beat our move-in numbers. And that's something I'm not sure any other providers in our industry could ever say. Why? Because we have a strict adherence, an adoption of this sales-centered culture. We grow our business one relationship at a time. So today, we're really going to talk about relationship building. In fact, there's a lot of people that come out of the training that I do, and they say, you know what? This is not really sales training. This is life training. This is how I should build relationships with my spouse, my significant other, my partner, with my children, with my boss, with my coworkers. That's exactly what this is. It's relationship building. And when we do that consistently, you're going to see your occupancy grow. You're going to fill your home. And I promise you that. It's just whether or not you will choose to believe it and, more importantly, execute it. One last thing, and then we're going to move on and pick up the pace. I also get hired by a lot of groups like Torch to do interviews, sometimes interview training, but a lot of companies ask me just to interview their salespeople for them and decide who would be the best fit for a community. I was asked at a conference in Colorado not too long ago. I was asked, how does that interview go? What do you look for when hiring senior living salespeople? And my answer didn't go well, but it's the truth, but it wasn't well received. And I've shared this story before, perhaps with some of you, but it is also an important part of your job as you're looking at associates that will work at your communities too, because labor is a big issue in our industry now. And that's something I also do talk about from time to time. But let's get back to interviewing, because I really look for 3 behaviors when I'm interviewing salespeople. Number 1 is discipline. It takes a lot of discipline to create a meaningful, memorable, and unique experience. You know why? Because I have to create that experience based on the customer's story. And to get their story, I have to ask a lot of questions, and I have to listen carefully to the answers. So if you want to be a great, extraordinary salesperson, you got to be a great listener, yes. But you also have to be a great questioner. So we're going to give you some tools that will help you be a better questioner. And 70, and I hope you write this down, 70% of your experience should be not looking around your home at all. It should be sitting in a quiet area and asking the customer questions about their wants, their needs, their desires, their hobbies, their urgency, their family dynamics, all of these things. And again, we'll talk about the tools to actually make that happen. The second thing that I look for, it takes a lot of discipline to be an extraordinary salesperson and to keep your tendency. So if you choose, there's that word again, if you choose to follow this approach, this culture, this mindset that we're talking about today, after every experience, even after every conversation you have with another person, stop and sit by yourself and think, how much time did I spend asking questions and listening to that person versus how much time did I spend talking to that person? It should be governed by 70% of the time you should be asking questions and listening. That's true with your marriages also. That's true with your children also. That's true with your boss also. That's true with your subordinates also. We need to ask questions, and we'll talk more about that at great length. I worked on my master's thesis in child psychology on that very topic. So it's something that I am absolutely passionate about. So we have to be disciplined. We have to be consistent in our behaviors. And lastly, it takes a little introversion to do this and to do this well. Now, I didn't say that if you're an extrovert, you can still do this. You just have to be extra disciplined to do it. But I'm an introvert. I'm a card-carrying, flag-waving, proud to be here introvert. And I was always told I'd never make it in sales because I'm an introvert. And then I realized selling is so much more about the customer story than it is my story. I love it because I love to sit and listen to people's stories. I find it fascinating. And when we do that, and don't miss this, folks, if you've nodded off on me, come back real quick. If you hear their entire story, you now have that opportunity to create a meaningful, memorable, and unique experience, to give them that glimpse into what their life could continue to look like at Torch, because you know their story so well and so fully and so wholly and so organically. That takes some introversion. So if you're an extrovert and you think, well, I'm out, can't do this. Oh, you can do it. You just have to put your extroversion aside and say, I'm going to let the customer shine in this interaction. Easy for me to do, harder for an extrovert to do, perhaps. By the way, it's also another national day. Can anybody tell me what national day it is? Can I read my little joke up here? Happy National.
Backwards.
There it is. Ding, 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 ding. Happy National Backwards Day. And when I saw that as I was putting the finishing touches on this last night, I thought, what a good day for us to be together because, folks, we as an industry are doing this backwards. Here's some more things I hope you will write down. We have historically done this, marketing to the collective. That's the way that our industry began. Yep, I'm seeing them in chat now. Great job, everybody. Marketing to the collective was the way we first started trying to fill our senior living communities 57 years ago. What does that mean? Marketing to the collective? It means this, and this is a direct quote from Sunrise's very first training manual they ever wrote 57 years ago. Here's what it says. The more phone outs you make and the more tours, their word, not ours, the more phone outs you make and the more tours you lead, the more your business is going to grow. Anybody ever been trained in something like that? I have. Dialing for dollars. Keep hitting those phones, Michael. Hit those phones. Make your 20 phone outs a day. And I thought, that sounds wrong when I was a young salesperson. And finally, I realized, well, it is wrong. That's why it sounds wrong, because it is wrong. That's called velocity and volume. And we'll talk about that a lot in a few moments. We know that marketing to the collective does not work. That means putting people in buckets and going, okay, the baby boomers want this, the Gen Xers want this, so-and-so wants this. You, don't miss this, folks, you should look at every single person you meet as a unique individual. And that's hard to do. That takes discipline, consistency, and introversion. Because we try to put people into buckets and we go, well, this is what the greatest generation, this is what they want. How dare you say something like that? I'm a baby boomer. And if you say baby boomers want this in senior living, my response back to you is, I'm Michael Marlow. I'm not just a baby boomer. I'm an individual. I want you to create an individual experience for me. And if you don't, no thanks. If you do, I'll consider you. Any nurses on the call? Any nurses? Any nurses? Any nurses in the room? Oh, we got one at least. One. I see one hand maybe. I also went to nursing school. I sound like a guy who can't figure out what he wants to do in his life. I was going to be a wound care nurse at one time. It's way too hard. Nurses work too hard. I couldn't do that. But nurses in our senior living communities always put together a personalized care plan for our residents. Yet we in sales, we never thought to do that. We just thought, well, we'll treat them all the same, give them a tour, and we'll hope for the best. We should give them a prospective resident unique experience as well while they are shopping in our community. We should do the same thing for their adult children because they're all looking for, how are you going to customize this to meet my needs, my parents' needs? Whatever the case may be, everybody wants a unique experience. And that's where we in sales have blown it for many decades. We're not blowing it anymore. We're going to create these meaningful, memorable, and unique experiences before they ever choose us. And when we create these experiences, they'll choose us much more frequently. So marketing to the collective is out. Selling to the individual is in. And I hope you write that down. Marketing to the collective, that's old school. It's been proven, and I'll share that research with you in a few minutes. It's been proven to be ineffective. In fact, the author of the best study ever on that said it's a disgrace to seniors to treat them in that way. I love that because she's right. We treat them all like they're all the same collective. Shame on us. If we treat them as unique individuals, now we're on the right track. And you know why this is so hard for some people to, in fact, I want to open that up. Why do you think it's so hard for people to go from a marketing to the collective mindset to selling to the individual mindset? Why do you think it's so hard? I could answer it in one word, but I want to hear what you think. Why is it so hard to switch from a marketing to the collective, giving generic tours, to a selling to the individual, creating meaningful, memorable, and unique experience? Oh, Don, we don't even need anybody else to weigh in. It's hard. What I'm proposing you today is hard. It's hard work. And it's something that you can't do alone. But we're going to talk about how do we get our teams involved in this also. That's the one answer, and that's the only answer. What I propose to you is harder. and giving generic tours. But, big but in the room, it's also much, much, much more effective. I don't know about you, but the hardest thing I've ever experienced in senior living is being 50% occupied, is being plateaued at 70% and thinking, why am I not at 100%? You can be. You just got to take it one relationship at a time. And if you do that, if you go, today is no longer backwards day, I'm going to do this the right way, you're going to find out you're going to fill your home, and you're going to do so quickly, much less costly. And we'll talk about that also. This is something I didn't get to test today, so let's see how it goes. I love this video. I hope it plays for you guys. Let's see if it plays. This gives us a little bit of an idea of how our industry thinks we should be filling our communities versus how it actually should be. Let's see if it works. It worked last night. It did. Oh, shoot. Okay. That's not going to work. Okay. What this video was, and you can Google this, by the way, what this video is they're in a sales meeting with a bunch of monkeys, which, boy, I've been in meetings like that. And the numbers are down. You can see that on the graph there. Shoot. The numbers are down. And when the gentleman leaves the room, the monkeys just turn the chart upside down and looks like sales are up and they have a big party. That's what happens in our industry all the time. Because as I told you before, when I'm speaking to groups, I always start off with the question, how are we doing as an industry? And almost every time, we're doing great. And we're not. And we're going to talk about the numbers in just a moment. We are doing poorly. In fact, I would say this is the biggest crisis moment in our industry is right now. And that comes from a lot of different angles. And I'm going to share those angles with you. So again, why listen to me? We track and used to track 3 metrics that are the most important metrics ever. Sorry, this isn't a very fancy slide because I put it together last night about 11 o'clock because that's when I got the data. And I said, I've got to share this with my friends at Torch. 3 metrics that you should measure every single day in your communities. Number 1 is inquiry to experience. Oops, what did I do? What did I do? Okay, there, we're back. Inquiry, leads, whatever you want to call them, to experience. In other words, how many people that call in, walk in, website in, however they inquire, what percentage of those do you get to actually come for a face-to-face experience? The industry average is somewhere between 30 and 40%. My company, Watercrest, is 57%. That means more than half the folks who inquire in our communities come and visit our communities. That is an extraordinarily high number. And that's because we promise them a meaningful, memorable, and unique experience. Oh, but it gets better, folks. Once they're there for the experience, what percentage of those people move in? Industry average is 26%. I'm about to cry, guys, right now. Because our numbers for 2023 were 46 freaking percent. Almost double what the industry is. I want you to make sure everybody understands this. Experience, formerly known as tour, formerly known as Prince. Sorry, just threw that in. I was in Minnesota 2 weeks ago. All they talk about is Prince. So the experience to move in, 26%, 1 out of 4 for the industry, 1 out of 2 for me and my company. It could be for you too, if we follow along with what we're going to talk about today. And this is the one, this is the money maker. And yeah, we have to talk money in senior living. I know we like to keep it light and fluffy and talk about serving our customers and all that, and it's all true, but it's also a industry where we want to make money. And it's inquiry to move in is the most important metric that you have. And that means the number of people who inquire in a year, percentage to the number of people who move in. Look at that number that the industry has, 6 to 10%. That is absolute, can't think of the right word. It's horrific. Think of the money that we spend to generate leads, and then we only convert 6 to 10% of those leads. That's horrific. That's inefficient. My company, 26%. That means 1 out of every 4 people who inquire end up moving in. Whoop, I dropped an AirPod. I'm really old, and AirPods are new to me. So when I'm saying AirPods and EarPods and all that, just play along, okay? Because I have no idea what I'm supposed to call them because I'm old. But they're new and they don't fit my ears very well yet. Any comments about those numbers? Inquiry to move in 6 to 10%, 26%. When I got those numbers last night, I thought, I won't be able to sleep tonight. I'll be so excited. And I sort of am, because this doesn't represent numbers. This represents people. These are all the people that we get to take care of now. Any comments at all?
Good stuff.
Everybody still hear
Thank
me?
you. Yes.
Did you say good stuff? And again, folks, there's nothing magical about this. This comes from hard work. This comes from, I have a team of 14 communities that have some rock stars there, because these numbers are not my numbers. I just taught them, and then they executed them beautifully. And again, I hope this excites you, because this is what your future could be. If we get together a year from now, your numbers can be exactly like this. And think of the efficiencies of these numbers. Think of the fact that our communities are almost all full, by the way, which is really cool. We don't spend much in marketing at all. We don't have to, because we already are full. And even if we're not full, we have plenty of leads to work with. We waste so much money, millions and millions and millions of dollars in our industry trying to generate leads when we have all these families who are already in our lead bank. Why would we want more when we don't even have enough time to work with the people who are in our lead bank? I've never understood the lead generation argument. There's a great consultant in our industry named Tracy Bill, and Tracy says it this way. She's based out of Florida, and she says it this way. We don't have a lead generation problem in our industry. We have a conversion problem. We don't have a lead generation problem in our industry. We have a follow-up problem. And she's right. So we have to create the experiences. That's going to be much more efficient than the tour is going to be. We have to spend less on marketing dollars to generate leads, and pay more attention to conversion. We need to follow up like crazy people. And we'll talk about ways in which to follow up with our customers, because we're doing a poor job at that right now. This is the program that I typically lead. This is my flagship program, if you will, selling the senior living experience. And I highlight those two words because, again, if you're going to become part of my team, you got to be a salesperson. I grew up not wanting to be a salesperson. I despise salespeople. Still do. Dread salespeople. In fact, I'm meeting with my financial planner tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and I dread it because he's a salesperson. He's really smart, though, with money, so I kind of give him a pass. He's a typical salesperson, and it drives me crazy. I like dealing with salespeople who are all about creating experiences for me. This guy's not so great, but again, he does pretty well with money, so I give him a pass. And then that second word is experience. Again, I hope that you never, I'm going to ask this rhetorically, don't answer because I don't want to embarrass anybody. How many of your homes have signs outside of them that say tour today or tours available? Don't answer because I don't want to embarrass anybody. I would take every one of those signs down tomorrow, today, because you're not giving tours to our customers. So what do you put up? I would put up things like, come experience the, whatever your community is called. Come experience the XYZ lifestyle. My company, they know not to put a tour sign up in one of my communities, because that sends the wrong message to our customer. Plus, every other senior living community in your city has tour today in front of them. I want to be different. We are in a sea of sameness in senior living that is like no other. We look alike, we price alike, we advertise alike, we're alike to our customers. I want to be different. And it starts with, you don't get a tour here, you get an experience. And again, you'll have all the tools today to do that. All right, I'm tired of listening to myself already. Here we go. I'm going to hear from you guys. Get ready. Unmute yourself. Shout out the answers. Chat if you wish. Either way you want to do it, I'm fine. Some of you've seen these questions before, but some of the answers have changed also. So let's go. Overall senior living occupancy is blank as of today. And that means independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing, all combined into one big number. Where are we from an occupancy standpoint?
70%.
50, did I hear?
70.
70? Okay. Come on, everybody plays. Jump in the chat box with me. I got 70.
My chat box isn't working. I'd say 40.
Oh no. 40. So we're all over the place already. 40, 70, 82, 82. Anybody else gonna play? That was 4. I'd love to hear from all of you. Isn't it fascinating that we don't know this number? That's not a punitive statement. It's okay. You should know this number. We got a 30. Martha's coming in at 30. We got an 80 with Whitney. We should know this number because this is part of our results. This is part of who we are. The number, we got a 20. Ooh, if we were 20, we'd be in big trouble. You got a 9.7. I think Lisa's thinking about a different statistic there.
75.
Joe says 80. Well, you're pretty close. Some of you anyway. It's 84.4%. And I'm going to share one slide with you in a couple of moments. It's going to have all these numbers on. Prince says 80, baby boomers time. We're at 84.4%. Pre-pandemic, we were 87.4%. I think that 4.4 is correct. We'll see it in a moment. So people think, well, we're almost back to pre-COVID numbers. So that's pretty good, right? There's a couple of issues with that number. First of all, that number is horrific. I've used that word twice now. 84.4 is completely unacceptable. We should be at 100% occupied. And I get in a lot of trouble when I say that. People go, you don't understand our market pressures. You don't understand our pricing structure. We're too expensive. You don't understand. Somebody down the street is offering 2 months free. You don't understand. Oh, I understand. I've been there. I've done that. I've sold against those folks. And I've got strategies to sell against all those folks. But at the end of the day, I challenge you to say, what can you control? All you can control is what you do. And for the next 3.5 hours or so, we're going to talk about this is what you do. And if you do it, you're going to win. You're going to serve more customers. And you're going to fill your home. So 84.4 is very much a misleading number. Yeah, it's almost back to where we were pre-pandemic. But where we were pre-pandemic was a terrible number. 87.4% was terrible. We were on a 2-year decline. That had nothing to do with the pandemic. It just had to do with we weren't doing this right. So we were already in bad shape. We went down significantly during COVID, which is absolutely understandable. And we're creeping our way back up. But here's the biggest number for you. Our revenue is at an all-time low. And we've become enamored with occupancy in our industry. And occupancy is an important number, but it's not a critical number. The critical number is revenue. Because right now, and I hope you write this down, 41% of all senior living sales are based on a concession. 41% of all senior living sales today are based on a concession or a discount. We have got to stop doing that because we are quickly approaching a commodity industry. And that means we're going to discount, and then our competitor down the street is going to discount. And next thing you know, we're in a price war. Who loses the most in a price war? Our residents. We can't afford to staff the appropriate levels anymore. We must get out of any price wars that we're in and start creating value for our customers. And folks, there's nothing I say that I want you to just go, just a cute thing that he says. Value is a thing. It's an important aspect of what we do. And we're going to talk about how do we create value and get away from the price issue, because there's a ton of research out there about why people will choose the community that they choose. Number one is trust. They've got to trust it. That's the number one differentiator that you can have in your home. Number 3, though, is value. Does the customer see value in your community, in your home? And the number one way we create value, and please hear this, the number one way we create value for our customer is by knowing what they value. What? The number one way we create value for our customer is knowing what they value, because does everybody value the same thing? No. Everybody values something different. And how are we going to know what this family is going to value? We're going to ask them questions and we're going to listen carefully to their answers. We're going to invest 70% of the overall time we have with them asking questions and listening. And once we do that, once we know that family, we're then going to create a meaningful, memorable, unique experience that is going to give that customer a glimpse into what their life could look like in our community, boom, we've got to move in. And now we go on to the next family, and then the next family, and then the next family, and the next family, because every family values something different. And we've got to know what they value. Price comes in at number 9 on the list of the top 12 reasons someone will choose the senior living community. Price is number 9. It's barely on the list. And I would argue that if you ask all your residents and your families of your current residents, if you ask all of them, how many of you chose our community because of price? I would argue that probably 0 or close to it. When you choose childcare for your child, do you go for the cheapest place in town? Of course not. Well, our customers don't do that either. So why we are so hung up on price and senior living, I agree. We've got to watch our pricing. We're getting to be an expensive thing. I get it. And we've got to be careful with that. But our customers are telling us very clearly, price is not my motivating factor. Value is my motivating factor, along with trust. That's why 41% of all senior living sales are based on a concession or on a discount. It's so sad. It just breaks my heart. But it's happening out there. Doesn't have to, but it's the lazy way of filling a community, and it's also the least profitable way. So occupancy is truly is up, not as up as it should be. Revenue is down. By the way, Brookdale, do you guys know Brookdale? I'm sure you all know Brookdale. They just reported their occupancy for the year, 72% occupied. The industry's 84% occupied. They're 72%. Think about that. They're the largest provider in our industry. They're the company that Wall Street sees as the face of our industry. And they're at 72% occupied. And their revenues are at an all-time low. I've worked there for 11 years. I know those folks really well. They're in terrible shape. Not a terrible company. I didn't say that. They're not. Good people there. But they're in terrible shape right now simply because they've bitten into the, well, let's just start discounting. Let's start filling our communities that way. It's the wrong way to do this. All right, question number 2. I won't spend as much time on the answer. What sector of the senior living industry had the greatest decline from the start of the pandemic to today? Was it independent living? Was it assisted living? Was it memory care? Or was it skilled nursing? What do you think?
Skilled nursing.
Got a skilled nursing? Skilled nursing? Eric says. Hey, you guys got a, there we go. Assisted living? Good. I wanted a little differentiation there. Skilled nursing? All right, looks like skilled nursing's winning the day. Ding, 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 ding. That's actually the right answer. Skilled nursing had the greatest decline because of the highest acuity. There's an article that I would point you to. If you're ever in a good mood, I know you're not now because you have to listen to me all day today. But if you ever catch yourself in a good mood and want to come back to reality, read an article, Google an article called "The Public Hates Senior Living." Oh, it's so much fun. The public hates senior living, and we wonder why we have the reputation we have. It was actually an article that was published during the pandemic, and it's about skilled nursing, and it's so factually incorrect that it should be criminal. But they talk about over 100 million residents no longer live in senior living during COVID. Well, what message are they implying? They're implying that 1 million people died in nursing homes during COVID. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. Yeah, a lot of them moved out. Some did pass away, unfortunately. But the article was so misleading. The public hates senior living. You should look it up sometimes. And it's laughable. If you didn't cry, you would laugh over it because it's such a terribly written article. But our customers see these things, and that's their hesitation about moving forward. This is my all-time favorite question. People keep telling me to take it out, and I'll never take it out because I love it so much. This was research that was done by a group called Marcus and Millichap. They're the best researchers in the senior living industry, bar none. And Marcus and Millichap did a study of 800,000 assisted living residents, 800,000, almost 1 million residents, actually conducted in the great state of Texas. Oh, sorry, in the great country of Texas. I know you guys believe your country. I get it. And I love Texas, by the way. But 800,000 assisted living residents were all polled during the height of the pandemic. What percentage of those residents do you think contracted COVID? Of the million assisted living residents, what percentage had contracted COVID? And this is one I want you to answer, and then I'm gonna ask you, how would our customers answer that? So I think I heard a 65, then I'm seeing 25, I'm seeing 4, I'm seeing nothing else yet. Let me go ahead and give you the Amber says 15. 10. I'm always curious as to what these guesses are based on. I mean, we don't have time to go there, but I'm always curious. The number is 0.87%, less than 1%. Now, I would argue that this is a flawed study because I think they looked at the height of COVID. It was 10 months in the year 2020. I think they should have done the study in 2021. That's me. But Dr. Fauci was behind the study, so who's going to argue with Dr. Fauci, right? Doesn't matter. You know, we could poke holes in any research, but the result was 0.87%. So here's my questions for you. How would your customers answer that question? What would they say the percentage of people with COVID in assisted living during the height of the pandemic? Wouldn't they say 100%? Because that's what the media led them to believe. When in fact, it was less than 1%. So here's my other question for you. Do your customers know this? If you don't know it, what's the chances our customers know it? 0. So how could we get them to know it? You could ask me for the research and I could send it to you. And next time you have a customer comes in that goes, yeah, but I'm a little concerned about COVID. I hear it's not over yet in senior living communities. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to share that research with them? Now, the research is a little bit dated now, but again, you could poke holes in research. I would absolutely use it. Because it's 800,000 senior living, assisted living residents. That's a big study. If you could get something that was Texas only, that's a better study, and that's probably out there. If you get something that's Torch only, that's better because it's your communities, your home. If you could get those statistics for your own community, that's the best. But those probably don't exist. So let's use what we do have because our customers desperately need to see this research. All right, let's have some good news. Inquiries in December of 2023 were much higher, or a blank percent higher than in March of 2020. What do you think? Are people starting to call us and website us and walk into our communities more? The answer is yes, they are, but by what percentage? Anybody? 20. They're leading our chats, John. I appreciate it. 35, 30. You guys are good. The actual number is 32%, 33% right now. And that's a really good number. Inquiries being up 33%, that's awesome. But in September of last year, they were 99% higher. So we're starting to see, we saw a huge increase in inquiries because people thought, okay, I can start shopping again. Senior living's a little bit safer now than it was before. But then it plateaued and then it started to decrease. It's still higher, but 33 is not 99. So we're really starting to see a little bit of erosion in inquiries. At the end of the day, folks, this is the least important question of the day because we've got enough inquiries. We've got enough leads. We've got enough families. It's what we're doing with those families that we need to talk about today, and we will talk about today. What percentage of senior living, senior 65 up will ever live in a senior living community? I actually gave you the answer to that earlier, so we'll skip this one. And just remind you, it's 9.7%. 29 years ago when I entered this industry, it was 9.3%. So we're up a whopping 0.4%. I just find that tragic and sad when we should be at 19% according to ACA figures and studies. That means that there are millions upon millions of seniors sitting in homes, their homes right now, living in substandard situations whose lives would be improved by living in your Torch community, yet they don't live there. So what can we do to change that? That's what today is all about. And that's frustrating to me because I know a lot of those seniors who live in their homes that should be living in a senior living community, and their quality of life would go through the roof. All right, what are the top 5 shows currently on Netflix? You have no time to watch this. So I thought I'd give them to you just because they popped up on my screen. Griselda, I think that's the one with, what's her name? The Latina.
Sophia, I can't say her last
There you
name.
go. Vergara. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. Sophia Vergara. That's it. The rest of them, never heard of. Anybody know these? Anybody know anything? You know them? I see a head shaking. Which one do you know?
Well, not know them.
I've
You've heard of
watched
them.
Fool Me Once, Virgin River, and The Walking Dead.
Everybody loves Walking Dead. Do they? Do they? I've never watched Walking Dead. We
I
just
used
finished
to.
The Marvelous Mrs. Oh, okay. We finished The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel in our house this week. Hilarious. We actually started on Daisy Jones and the Six last night. Oh, I think that one's going to suck me in, guys. I think that's going to be my February. That's going to be my go-to. It looks like it's going to be pretty good. So, all right, let's move on. Our customers, how they would answer question number 3, just as a reminder, question 3 was what percentage of seniors at the height of COVID had contracted COVID? Our customers would say 100%. And we know that's not true. We know it was less than 1%. What does that really mean, though? That means that senior living did a great job in managing COVID, even better job than acute care hospitals did, according to some research out there. So again, that's why I call you guys heroes, because you are. But if our customers don't know it, they won't know it. And the only person to tell them is you. Because none of our governing agencies, unfortunately, are going to do that. And I've asked a lot of them. And nobody is defending our wonderful industry. So we're going to have to defend ourselves. And I'm up for the challenge. I do this every day, all day. And I'm going to continue to do it because it's important for our customers to hear the truth about what you guys are doing. All right, this is our scorecard. And this will be updated in less than 2 weeks, because unfortunately, NIC, National Investment Center, nic.org, only publishes occupancy statistics every quarter. That's not true. They publish them in the middle of the quarters also, but their big studies are done every quarter. So this is a little bit dated. I know the numbers are going to be slightly higher than this when the new numbers come out. But right now, overall occupancy is 84.4%. The number you see below that in black is where we bottomed out during the pandemic. 78. Those were grim days, folks. They were. And yes, we've come back a little bit. What's that? About 6 points of comeback. Yet our revenue is still extremely low. We can't afford to have revenue low. Occupancy is a little bit of a misleading statistic. I'll take it, but I want the revenue associated with it as well. Independent living, 86.1% as of now, up from 81.8. That's a pretty good jump. A rebound is pretty decent right there, and simply because the acuity level is lower. Assisted living, what you guys are most interested in, look at the jump there, 7 points-ish, dropped down to 75.4, it's up to 82.6. Again, revenue is very low there. Notice the very low rebound in skilled nursing. They dropped to 74.1. I never thought I'd see that day, because that's where I started my career started in skilled nursing, and we were 96, I think, percent occupied at the time. And now we dropped all the way to 74, and we're back up to 78.2. Got a long way to go, folks. We do. So let's talk a little bit more about what we're going to do today. And again, this central message will keep popping up on our screen because it is the biggest takeaway that I want you to have for today. We cannot wait to create a personalized experience for our customers once they move into our community. We have to create that before they move into our community. And we do that based on their story. And it makes us think different. We have to think differently than we ever have before. And by the way, guys, I think we probably will take a break in about 10 minutes, if that's okay with everybody. Take a break and I can towel off and get another drink and pop a lozenge in my mouth. How about that? So if you can give me 10 minutes, we'll take a quick break. But this Think Different really comes about because this training program is very different than most training programs. It's because, as I said before, it's behavior based. So we're going to talk a lot about how do we amend our behaviors? How do we change our behaviors to really begin to think about how we build trust with our customers? Because at the end of the day, trust is their number one fear, or number one factor in not moving into a senior living community. They don't trust us. It's also the reason they will choose us is if they find a community that they do trust. And trust cannot be grown by a sales process. It can be grown by how we interact with them, how much time we invest in the relationship. We have to think differently than we ever have before. Let me give you an example. My daughter got married 4 years ago now. But right after she got married, and all the hoopla was over, I decided, my son-in-law is a wonderful man. He really is. And I decided, he had said, out of all the wedding gifts they got, he didn't get a grill. And he was a little bit bummed out. Well, I wanted to surprise him and get a grill. So I went to Lowe's, and because Lowe's had sent me an advertisement in the mail, and the advertisement said, grill 30% off all weekend long. I love my son-in-law, but I love him even more at 30% off. So I went to Lowe's to buy a grill on a Saturday night. That's a little insight into my personal life. And I went there. It was a rainy night. I'll never forget it. And I went there and went to the grill section, and there it was, the grill that I wanted to buy. So I waited for a salesperson to show up. They didn't show up. And so I pushed the button on the wall, and the voice of Morgan Freeman, or God, I can't tell them apart, came over the intercom, and it said, assistance needed in grills. And I thought, well, somebody will be here in a moment. Nobody came. So I pushed the button again. Nobody came. So I walked over to customer service. They said, we'll send somebody right over. Nobody came. So I walked out of Lowe's. And actually the next day on Sunday, I went to Home Depot and I bought the same grill and I paid full price for it. But I didn't want to give Lowe's the revenue because of their lack of salesmanship. Did marketing work at Lowe's? Oh yeah, it worked. It got me in the door. I went to Lowe's on a Saturday night. Did the selling work though? No. And I think that happens all the time in senior living also. We get tons of inquiries. We had over 17 million inquiries last year in the senior living industry. Our conversion rate of those inquiries to move in was somewhere between 6 and 10%. And again, those are brand new statistics that I just got last night. I thought they were high, they were right at 10%. People are telling me now, some studies are saying they're even at 6%. Doesn't matter. Those are all really low. So we don't have a marketing problem. We have a conversion, selling problem. So we've got to think different. We've got to do this differently than ever before. And the nice thing is we're going to do it the right way. I sleep really well at night after training programs because I think I've helped people understand a great moral compass, fully intact way in which to sell, because I thought all salespeople were sleazy before I got into selling. I thought they were all manipulative. And then I found out it can be done well. And isn't it nice when the right thing to do is also good for our customers? And that's the mantra of this training. It certainly is. One more slide and then we'll take a break. I want you to change your mindset a little bit. First of all, you're a salesperson. You just have to get to that point. Now, people ask me all the time, should we have the word sales on our name badges? My answer is a surprising no. People usually say, he's going to say yes, he's going to say yes. I actually say no, simply because of that term sales has such an off-putting reputation. I don't want to put another barrier between you and a potential move-in. So I like the word community relations directors, or whatever you want to put on there. I don't like the word marketing though, because marketing is not what we do. Do we need to do marketing? Do we need to generate leads? Yeah, we do. There's a company called Claiborne Senior Living. And again, if anybody wants any of these studies or any of this research, I'm happy to send it. Claiborne just put out an article last week that said that they stopped their relationship with A Place for Mom and Caring.com, the two biggest lead aggregators out there. Because they said what they found out was that leads just generated themselves organically. They have a website, you have a website. And they said, we were getting plenty of leads. Why would we pay somebody like A Place for Mom for more leads? They said, we stopped doing that. And we've seen our business grow, and our marketing expenditures have dropped by 40%. Think about that. They no longer have to spend so much money on marketing. They invest their time and their focus and their energy and their attention on selling. And I would even argue that they focus their money on selling too. And we'll talk about that when we get back from our break. So at the end of the day, marketing is there to create inquiries. Selling is there to convert those inquiries into move-ins. Marketing costs you revenue. Selling creates revenue for you. So the biggest difference that we see out there is that marketing is not the end game. Selling is the end game. Selling trumps marketing. By the way, I know I've used the word Trump twice. I don't know your political feelings, so we'll only use the word Trump as a verb. So no nouns today. But selling trumps marketing. Selling trumps marketing. And that's where our efforts need to go. Marketing is advertising. Marketing is direct mail pieces. Marketing is your website. Marketing is word of mouth. Marketing is referrals. All these things make up marketing. But they're there to create an inquiry. And an inquiry does nothing for us from a revenue standpoint. Selling is where we must go. So let me leave you with this. How many millions of dollars has our industry lost over the years by way too much marketing expenditure? How many millions of dollars has our industry lost because we have not sold to a family who is still living at home and living in terrible situations because our selling behaviors haven't been up to par? We've lost millions and millions of dollars through just those two activities. Too much money spent in marketing, too little attention given to selling to convert those people into revenue generating move-ins in our communities. That's where we're going to go. So we've kind of put the first hour and a half on let's define the problem. For the next time that we're together, we're going to start working on solving the problem. And we'll do that for the rest of today. I want to take a break here, but I want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you might want to ask. Any questions about anything at all?
Hey, Mike,
Hi,
so as
Mike.
we've gotten further away from COVID, and for some people slash, in a lot of cases, that's not top of mind, how do you suggest we talk about that slash introduce it? And do you suggest we introduce that if it doesn't come up? I mean, if they're scared, do we want to talk about things during the experience that they might be scared of?
Okay, so your first question was, do we bring it up if they haven't? The answer is no. No, 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 unconditionally no. If they bring it up, and I promise you, if you give them enough space and grace, as I like to call it, it's going to come up in most cases. That's when we address it. And we address it by sharing that statistic that only 0.87% of people contracted COVID at the height of COVID. So you can imagine how well we're doing now. And again, if you have better local statistics than that, use those. But let's say they bring up, and this is how they won't normally come in and say, I'm concerned about COVID. What they will say is things like this: I'm concerned about my mom's physical well-being here. Can you help me with that? We should not begin to talk about how many nurses we employ and our safety. What we need to do is say, tell me what safety concerns you are concerned about. Funnel down to the specific concern, because a lot of people won't bring up the C word right off the bat. They'll bring it up as the F word, fear, but you've got to know what that fear actually is. So would I bring it up? Absolutely not. When they bring it up, it doesn't bother me because I know that I have the right answers to share with them once I understand what that concern is.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Other questions?
I'm sorry, I wanted to find out where you were saying you did the research. You said the name, I didn't catch it quite well.
Which name?
For the research, on the 0.87, according to the research for COVID, where do we get that?
It's 0.8. Yeah, and you can get that through me. You can get it online too. It's a group called Marcus and Millichap. MILLICHAP. I think it's a Texas-based organization, I'm pretty sure. And they're really boring people. They're very dry. So if you send me an email at the end of this, I could just send you the study. But again, you can find it. It's fascinating study, but the most fascinating part of it is nobody knows about the study. We get all this research, and then when we do with it, we ignore it because we need to make our 20 phone outs that day. What? We've got to change. It's not backwards day anymore.
Okay.
Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
And again, the easiest way to get the research is through me. I have it all. And even some of these research, and we haven't even talked about the best research yet, but some of these articles I've actually edited. It didn't change any of the words because that's inappropriate, but took out some of the stuff that doesn't apply to us. So I have a lot of edited studies too that are just information that you need to know. I am so sorry for coughing all over you guys today. Aren't you glad we're not in person?
That's okay. All right,
Any other
yes, I will
questions?
need your email later on. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll give that to you. All right, guys. John, is it okay if we take 10?
I'm having a full conversation with you, Mike, every time, and then I forget I'm muted. So
The joys of Zooming. So some of you have asked for the research. And again, I know somebody's giving an experience on the phone. Love it. And Jenna, I will have my email address at the end of it, but I also put it in chat over here, so you're welcome to reach out. And don't just ask for research, because there would be about 50 things I would send you. If one of them particularly interests you, please ask for that one. And again, I think the best research, what much of this is based on, is still coming. We'll be there probably in about a half an hour. So it's one that I hope everyone asks for. So as we're joining back in, anybody have any other questions about what we've covered so far? I know it's a long day on Zoom, guys, so I appreciate your attention so much.
Is the research the same from the last time we would have requested it?
Some of it,
Okay.
and then there's some new research I'll be talking about as the day goes on. The research, and it's not really research, but the numbers that I shared with you guys for conversion, those are my Watercress numbers, the company I'm employed by, and you're welcome to have those. And again, if you want the entire, thank you. My wife just bought me a Diet Coke, number 2 for the day. So I'm going to be really caffeinated for the second session. So if you want any of that, I'm happy to send that as well. Again, it's not research, it's statistics. But those statistics, and I kind of knew they were coming, but oh, they made me feel so good last night. Because I just know it's just another reminder that the stuff works. It still works. But there is some new research I'll be talking about too before the day is over. And the biggest part of the research is we've got to share this with our customers. And there's so much research that I don't share with you guys. So I would strongly encourage you to become, kind of a research guru. And my favorite site by far is nic.org, NIC.org. And McKnight Senior Living has some really good articles. That one from Claiborne Senior Living is a company I don't really know well. I don't know anyone who works there. But when they said they cut ties with A Place for Mom and caring.com, ooh, that was big. They're a big company. That was a big deal. And my company has also cut ties with them. And I'm not here bashing them. I'm not. I'm just telling you there's a better, more cost-efficient way in which to do that. Brookdale actually abandoned their contract with A Place for Mom. It was all over the headlines. And their numbers tanked almost immediately, and they re-upped, which I thought was just quite hilarious, because it's that reactionary way in which to approach senior living. You really don't need lead aggregators. You don't. There's a better way, and that's what we're going to talk about for the remainder of the day. Marcus and Millichats is also a great site, although I find them to be very dry with their statistics. Seniorlivingforesight.com or .org. I should have looked that up in our break, and I didn't. That's a great, you'll get a volume, huge volume of information from them every day. But again, it's legit. There's no spam or none of that. But seniorlivingforesight.net. It's either net, org, or com. You'll find it, I promise you. The guy's name is Steve Moran, Moran, and he's supposed to interview me live on his website coming up soon. Haven't heard from him. We'll see. We'll see. I see him at conferences all the time. He's a character. Any other questions? All right, here we go. So last kind of foundational thing, and then we're going to get into the 8 sales standards. There's another piece of information that some of you already have, and if you don't have it, I would strongly encourage you to ask me for it, and that's called the Torch Sales Standards. These are 8 sales standards that I've written, and we're going to go over them in a few moments. But I've written those out for you guys also. I would strongly encourage you to laminate those and have those in your homes, because when we laminate something, for some reason, it just makes it more important. But it's really a synopsis of everything that we're going to talk about for 5 hours today, all in 8 selling standards. And again, I wrote that in 2019, and it's just a synopsis. So we're going to go into much greater detail today about each one of those. But they were largely based on, I've been influenced by a lot of people, folks. One of them was a guy named Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I get asked weekly, what business book are you reading right now? My answer always is none. Right now, I'm actually reading Heaven Imagined, which is awesome. I highly recommend that to you guys, from Don Burke, who I know his agent very well, but it's a great Christian book on heaven. Highly recommend it. But if you want a business book from me, I've read a few, but most of them I go, yeah, whatever. There's 2 that I would point you to. Number 1 is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And if anybody doesn't want to invest in that, and you don't really want to spend $12.99, send me an email. I'll buy a copy for you right out of my own pocketbook. My wife is not here, so she's not hearing that. But I'll buy it for you. I buy hundreds of copies of that throughout the year for folks, and I'm happy to do it because I think it's a great starting book about creating relationships of trust. It's not about selling, it's not about senior living, but it is about creating relationships of trust. So it's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I highly, highly recommend it. The other one is one I'm making a presentation on in Michigan next week. It's called Fish Sticks. It's a tiny little book, but it's a really interesting take on our labor shortage right now. And really, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's how do we take the behaviors that we're talking about today, the selling behaviors, and turn those into ways to attract and retain employees. It's a fascinating, short little read, but it's fascinating. Yes, it's called Fish Sticks with an S on there. It actually comes from a series of books called Fish. The number one, the top book is called Fish. It's based on Pike Place Market in Seattle, Washington, if anybody's been there, where they throw fish. I've done trainings with those folks. I've done videos with those folks. Those folks are amazing folks. And they put out a book series, the one I like the best. I like Fish a lot, but I really like Fish Sticks because I have a little bit of an attention deficit. So I like to read short books. And Fish Sticks is a really cool book if you're looking at a training and attracting and retaining employees. And who isn't, right? But back to the first book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Dr. Covey is someone who I got to meet a couple of times. Oh.
Sorry, who's the author on Fish Stick? I tried to find it and I couldn't.
Great
Sorry.
question.
Okay.
You should be able to Google it. If you go to Amazon and type in Fish Sticks, it'll pop up.
Yeah, it just gives me like a bunch of, is it one word maybe?
No, it's 2 words.
Yeah, I give
I
you
looked it up last night, as a matter of fact. Yeah,
I'll-
you'll find it.
Yeah.
That's a good question who the author is. I don't recall. I should know that.
Is it-
Stephen London, is that what you're saying, Justin? Okay,
Mm.
sounds good to me. It's been a while since I've read it, but I'm actually doing a training in Michigan, as I said, next week, a face-to-face training, and they want to talk about that HR thing. And I thought, I'm going to reread that book over the weekend so I can get ready for that. It's just a cool book. It's about a sushi restaurant and how, anyway, I'm not going to get into that because we're going to be way behind. Let's talk about 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think every senior living professional should read it. Again, not about senior living, not about selling. Sometimes we get a little bit too incestuous in our reading and we only read senior living stuff. We shouldn't do that. We should read relationship building stuff. And when I got to meet Dr. Covey on 2 occasions, I actually became a trainer for him back in the day. And I asked him, I said, out of your 7 habits that you've written, which one of you is the most important? And he said, number 5. And I said, why didn't you make it number 1? And he said, well, that's been my biggest professional regret ever. He said, it should have been number 1. And you see it at the top of your screen there. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. It's kind of, sorry guys. Let me wipe myself off here. I know it's gross. I'm sorry. Hopefully y'all are medical enough that you understand this stuff happens. I'm sorry. But we talked about this a little bit already, but the one thing that strikes me about this is that second word in this habit. Seek first to understand. This really does speak to the introversion piece that I talked about before. Our willingness to invest our time into a family. You see, we have to seek first to understand that family, and it has to happen first. Because if we ask questions and listen, invest time and get to know that family holistically, organically, thoroughly, they're much more willing to then hear our story as well. Does that make sense? If you understand their story, and they know you do because of the time you invested and the questions and the listening that you did, they're more interested in your story because they know now your story is based on their story. So Dr. Covey says in any relationship, you have to seek first to understand that other person before they will ever be interested in understanding you. We get that backwards on National Backwards Day. A tour is all about us telling them about our torch home. Let me show you around our home here. It's beautiful. This is where our residents eat. This is what our apartment. This is where we do our activities. And the person's going, none of this makes any difference to me. That's not what I'm looking for. Instead, if we invest the time and say, tell us a little bit about your current situation. Tell me what you're looking for in a senior living community. Then you can tailor your presentation to meet their needs, and you have come a long way in creating that meaningful, memorable, unique experience. The second question the second quote that's on the screen here is maybe my all-time favorite. I love this one because one of my dear friends gave it to me. His name is Greg, and he's a marriage counselor. And Greg has told me many, many times, we sit together at the Louisville Orchestra, which we both hate, but we love our wives, so we do it because they like orchestral music. It bores me to death. But Greg and I sit there and chit-chat and whisper during the performances. We're so inappropriate, but it's the only way we can get through it. But he told me, he said, he uses the St. Francis saying, the greatest hunger of the human soul is to be understood. And as soon as he told me that, all I could think about was yes, 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 especially in senior living. You see, folks, when they walk through your community, through your community's door, I believe, and research points to, they want somebody that's going to say, please understand my situation. Please understand what's going on with my family. And the reason I think we don't do that is because we'd rather tell our story, or we don't have the emotional time, the emotional bank account to invest, because it's grueling to listen to some family stories. It's hard. It's gutting. It's emotional. It's easier just to give a tour, but it's ineffective to give a tour. So instead, we're going to hear all the details about our customer story because we know they want somebody to understand them. In fact, my mother, when she was shopping for senior living, she said to me, you know what I like about this community? They get me. And those are powerful words. They get me. You know how they got her? Because they asked her a ton of questions. They invested time in hearing her story and my story and my sister's story. We were shopping as a family. We needed somebody to understand our unique situation, and only 1 out of 11 communities chose to do that. The rest of them gave us generic tours. Shame on us when we do things like that. No more tours. No more tours. Creating meaningful, memorable, and unique experiences is the way to go. If you don't mind writing one more thing down, because I have 2 more real quick stories, then we're going to move on. But if you would write this down for me, I would be really grateful. And I probably should have a slide with this on. because Greg, my marriage counselor friend, he also told me this one time, and I'll never forget it. I don't want you to forget it. Here's what he said, and it's a little long, so I'll say it 3 times. And I hope you write it down. The health of any relationship is largely based on the number of questions you ask the other person. The health of any relationship is largely based on the number of questions you ask the other person. The health of any relationship, he was thinking about marriages, but it absolutely applies to senior living selling also. The health of any relationship is largely based on the number of questions you ask the other person. And I immediately asked him, I said, Greg, is it the number of questions that you ask? Or is it the quality of the questions that you ask? He said, it's the number. No doubt. He said he has all of his couples keep diaries. And in one page of that diary, all they do is make tick marks. How many questions did you ask your spouse today? And he says, I can tell just by that one page in their diary whether they're going to get divorced or not. And I said, you're crazy. And he said, I'm telling you, it's true. He said, if you ask someone else questions, what message are you sending to them? And I said, well, you're telling them that you're interested in them. Right. If you don't ask somebody questions, what message are you sending to them? I'm not interested in you. Right. He said, you just answered your own question. The number of questions we ask our customers has a direct correlation to the chances that they're going to choose us and move into our community. Simple as that, folks. And let me tell you the saddest story that I'll tell all day, which happened in Santa Cruz, California, 2019. I was there for a speaking conference to nurses. I speak a lot at nursing conferences. 150 nurses in the room. I was the second speaker of the day. The first speaker of the day was the president and the CEO, currently still is, of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It was called the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at that time. And as I promised him I would do, anytime I'm speaking to a group, all you have to do is dial 988 on your phone, and you get the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, folks. They are heroic folks themselves in what they do. But this gentleman and I have gotten to know each other, and he was speaking to this group of nurses, and I asked him a question. I said, how do you train your counselors to take phone call after phone call? He said, it's a pretty simple thing. And here's a direct quote from what he said. I teach them to ask 1,000 questions during the call, with the most important question being, tell me more about that. There's a lot in that one sentence. He said, I train them, teach them to ask 1,000 questions during the phone call, with the most important question being, tell me more about that. And he says every single call that comes in is tracked on an X and a Y axis. I'm trying to make that with my hands here. He said, and we can tell how many questions the counselor asked on this Suicide Prevention Lifeline. How many questions they ask has a direct correlation to how well the call goes. He called them winning calls and losing calls. I don't even want to think about losing calls. Can't even go there in my mind. But what fascinated me about this is that these counselors really aren't there to share resources first and foremost. They're just there to understand the story. They're there to ask questions and to listen and let the customer share. Have you ever been in an argument with a significant other or a spouse and just said something like this? Just let me talk. Don't interrupt me. Don't try to fix the problem. Just listen. I'm terrible at that sometimes in my marriage. I'm really good as a salesperson, not so good in my marriage sometimes. That's what our customers are looking for. Do they want resources? Do they want answers to their problems? Yes. But first, they want you to hear their story and to understand them. And when you do that, I believe it's the greatest competitive advantage you will ever have. Period. And we could stop the training right there because that's what you need to hear. But we're going to continue on and talk about how to operationalize that. But it is a big moment in the training, so I'm going to stop. Any questions, comments, concerns?
That is so profound. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Listen, I couldn't even tell that story for the first couple of years without just bawling, because there were 150 nurses in the room. Everybody was crying, including me. And when I asked him that question, he told me afterwards, he said, I really appreciated the question. It was getting really tough in there. And I said, it was, and it was your fault. I mean, there's nothing to joke about with the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, but it reminds us when people are in need, they need us to ask questions and to listen to them. That's what they need. They don't need us to take them on a tour. Say, this is what we can do for you. Because you don't even know what you can do for that family yet. Until you know what that family needs from you, you cannot customize a thing about your home. We've got to stop the generic nature. One more thing, and I promise I'll move on this quick. A generic tour promises a generic lifestyle. Who in the heck wants that? People want exciting, experience-filled lifestyles. You can only provide that by knowing what do they want to experience. What kind of lifestyle do they want? This both is transferable in every area of your life, and I hope you're seeing that bigger picture. I put this slide in last night too, because Usher's going to be performing at the halftime show, folks. He is, and he's awesome. I taught him how to dance. But I do put this slide in at this point too, because I want you to understand that this truly is not sales training. And I know I've said this before. This is life training. All of these behaviors apply to all areas of your life. So have we been doing this all wrong? Absolutely. And this slide gets me in trouble also. I get in trouble a lot in our industry because people go, that's very insulting. We've had a good run as a senior living industry. And my response back to them is, you're heroic in what you've done. But the opportunities we have missed overshadow any successes that we've had as an industry. And people get even madder at me. But I still get asked to speak, so it must be hitting a nerve somewhere. I spoke at 41 different conferences last year, and that was face-to-face ones. I've done more virtual. I don't track virtual conferences like this because there's so many of them. But it's not because I'm a great speaker, especially today with my hacking away, but it's because this message has to be delivered. And we must see change, and not just nibble change, big chunks of change in our industry if we're going to survive and perhaps even thrive. So the word of the day is, can anybody think of what the word of the day might be? Anybody think of what it might be? It is experience. Try anybody? Experience is the word of the day.
Yay.
We must be all about creating meaningful, memorable, and unique experiences for our customers while they are shopping, not after they move in, while they're shopping. If you do catch the research bug like I have and start looking around in our industry, by the way, I shared 4 places that I look for statistics. There are so many more. I mean, American Healthcare Association has a great website. ASHA has a great website, ASHA, oh my goodness. Leading Age has a great website. There's tons of research that can be done out there. If you ask me my favorite, I would say seniorlivingforesight.net for volume, because they cover everything. NIC.org for statistics and trends and financial stuff. It's kind of boring, but at the end of the day, it gives us our report card on how we're doing. So our customers deserve an experience. And when someone comes into your community, and folks, here's a big pivotal moment. So hang in there with me, because this is something you need to hear. When people come into your community for an experience and you start asking questions and listening to them, you know what's going to happen? More often than not, they're going to say something like this to you. I'm sorry, excuse me. I thought I was here for a tour. Why are we just sitting here chatting instead of looking around your home? That's when we go, yes, God is good. It worked. I'm so excited, because you got 2 big valuable pieces of information right there. Number one, what are your competitors doing with these folks? They're giving them tours, and they probably just came from a tour. And now you're not giving them a tour, and you're seen as, oh, this place is different. Yep, I want to be different. I don't want to be lumped in with those tour givers because they're doing it wrong. But the second piece of information you just got was, this is an opportunity to explain to them what I'm trying to do. Here's how I would do it. You choose your words, but this is the word. These are the words that I used and would continue to use. The reason Sorry, Diet Coke also, makes me burp. We're friends here, right? We can talk about this. John's going, why did I ask this guy to speak today? But it also gives you the opportunity to say something like this. The reason I'm not giving you a tour today is because I need to get to know you and your family and what's important to you, because I want to customize every aspect of our home to meet your needs and your needs only, because that's really what you deserve. This is a big decision, and I understand that. The only way I can do it is by asking you a few more questions. May I continue? You want to see a customer melt, use words like that. Telling you're going to customize this whole experience to them and to them only, because that's how you offer your services at Torch. It's true, but the customer needs to hear you say those words, because then they look at those other places with generic tours and go, wait a minute, they were trying to fit my mom into a square hole and she's a peg. She's a round hole. Round peg, you know what I mean anyway. You're going to customize everything to meet their needs. And folks, without that, you're not giving them a glimpse into what life could look like in your home. You're not. And we need to do that. So experiences are customized. Tours are generic. Experiences are atypical. Tours are typical. Experience sends the message that this customer deserves this level of treatment. Tour sends the message that you're all alike. It's a cattle call. Experiences are highly effective. Tours are highly ineffective. Experiences are the greatest differentiator that you have in your toolkit. Tours are what everyone else does, and who wants to be in that sea of sameness? Experiences are community driven. Everybody participates in the experience. Tours are typically led by one person. Our customers deserve better, and we're going to start showing how to make them better, because they are like snowflakes and fingerprints. They're all unique. We must embrace that uniqueness. And here we go, folks. What you all came for today, and that's the 8 sales standards. So we're going to spend a significant amount of time, especially on the first 4 standards. These are the most important ones. That doesn't mean the last 4 aren't important. They are, but they're more supportive. But standard number 1, 2, and 3 really lead up to the crescendo, to the climactic moment. And that climactic moment is standard number 4. So we'll kind of work our way up. We'll hit that standard 4. We'll talk about that at length. And I want you to challenge every part of it. And I want you to ask me questions about every part of it. Because if I were John, if I were you, I would be doing all of these things today in my community, today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And it would just become that different new way in which we operated our community. But it all starts with deep discovery. When you think about discovery, I have judges and some attorneys in my family, and in my friend group too. I have a lot of attorneys, which I try to avoid because they're just not much fun. But I'm just kidding. Well, sort of, some of them. But discovery is actually a legal term, and discovery just is a fancy word for asking questions and listening to the answer. If you watch the greatest TV show of all time, which is inarguably Cops, yes, Cops, the greatest TV show ever. I'm still very upset that it's not on live anymore, but I hear it's coming back, which is cool. Cops are great questioners. Back when I graduated from the University of Kentucky in 1981, do the math, folks, I'm old. I had my counselor's the wrong word. What's the word I'm looking for? My consultant, that's not the right word. Anyway, the person who kind of led me through my time at the University of Kentucky, that's going to bug me now. Anyway, she told me, she said at the end of our years together, she said, I prepared a vocational list for you based on a test, an aptitude test that I had taken in her class, getting ready to start my master's program. And she said, this is a vocational test that shows what your personality, what your behaviors have led you to become in a career. And I said, oh, that's pretty interesting. And she said, yeah. She said, I don't think you're going to like it, though, that much. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's do it. She said, first of all, you're a big-time introvert. And I said, yeah, I'm kind of aware of that. Have been all my life. And she said, so this job vocational list kind of reflects that a little bit. Number 49 on a list of 50 folks, and you can't make this stuff up, was salesperson. And she said, don't be a salesperson, obviously. And I said, you don't have to worry about that, Dr. Williams. I will not be a salesperson. I hate salespeople. I hate everything they stand for. I'll never be a salesperson. I actually told her, I said, I'd rather dig ditches than to be a salesperson. And then what did I do as a career? I was a salesperson. Yep. By the way, number 50 on that list of top 50 was motivational speakers. So here we go. Here we go. I went completely against the grain of what I was intended to do. But that wasn't my issue. That was the test issue. Because the test thinks that motivational speakers and salespeople need to be extroverted. They need to be loud. They need to be funny. I'm not any of those things. I try to be sort of kind of when I'm doing this, but I'm an introvert at heart. And that allows me to be a great questioner and a great listener. By the way, number 1 on that vocational list, anybody want to take a guess? I gave you a little hint a minute ago. Number 1 on the list was police officer. Because police officers are highly trained to ask questions and to listen to the answers. If you ever are involved with a police officer, I hope not, but if you know any of them personally, talk to them about their training that they have, because the training they have is very similar to what you guys are getting today too. It's asking questions in a sequential manner and listening carefully to the details of the answer. So let's talk about deep discovery. And these 8 standards, as I said before, I wrote these in 2019. I was asked to write them. I really didn't want to write them because I didn't think I could do it, because there's so much I wanted to talk about. I didn't think it'd fit on one page, but I made it work. And the biggest problem I have with these standards is that people oftentimes say, so you're telling me if I do these 8 things consistently, I'll fill my community? My answer is yes. Next question. Because the answer is yes. Next question. It's just whether or not you will answer that if question. If you change your behaviors to these, you'll fill your home. And then that second question is it going to take time? Yeah, it's going to take a little time. Not much, but it will take some time. The other pushback I'll get on these is that it seems too simple. There's got to be more complexity to selling senior living. And I say, there's not. This is a simple approach. In fact, the training program that I inherited at the company that I work for, that I'm employed by, had 417 pages in the training. And I said, I will not train this. I said, I will not take the job if this is what I'm going to train. And they said, do you have your own? I said, duh, yeah. And it's 32 pages. And the training program is 32 pages. It takes 2.5 days to cover it all, but it's 32 pages. Because selling senior living is not based on a sales process. It's based on behavior. So behavior number 1 is deep discovery. Does anybody remember the actual quote that I gave you from my friend who is the president and CEO of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline? Does anybody remember his 1-line answer to my question, how do you train your counselors to take call after call? Does anybody remember that answer? It's okay if you don't.
Teach
Here's
them
what
to
he
ask
said.
1,000 questions, with the most important being, tell me more about that.
Oh my gosh, somebody's my favorite student in the class.
Lisa's our favorite
Thank
in
you for
general.
writing this. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad you wrote that down. I hope all of you hear that, because again, there's a lot of depth in that one sentence. I teach them to ask is it really 1,000 questions do you think that they ask? Is that a literal? No. It just means ask a lot of questions. The second part of that, though, is I bite my tongue. The second part of that is even more telling when it says the most important question is tell me more. Tell me more means that you're going to take a deep dive into that caller on the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. We're also going to take a deep dive with our customers. 70%, I hope you've written it down. If not, please do. 70% of the entire experience should be invested in sitting in a room and asking questions and listening to the answer. Now, that's the first experience that you have. What's the likelihood they're going to come back for a second experience? Well, research tells us it's really, really high. Are you going to do the 70-30 rule again? My answer probably would be no, but you're still going to invest most of the time asking questions and listening. And you may think, why would I do that? I've already asked this family questions. They're back for a second meeting. Doesn't that mean probably things have changed? They've moved forward in their decision making. They're back. They're willing to invest more time with you. You need to find out what their situation is now. And always in the back of your mind with that thought of tell me more, let's go deeper, because I need to know specifically what it is that you're looking for. I do a lot of coaching, one-on-one coaching with salespeople. And so I listen in on their telephone calls because deep discovery is just as important on telephone calls as it is in face-to-face. The 70-30 rule applies to telephone calls as well as it does to face-to-face. And when I'm listening to them talk on the phone calls that I'm listening in on, I keep a little timer. It's actually built into my computer that I can hit a button and it shows me how much, when they start talking, I hit the button. When they ask questions, I hit the button. And at the end of it, it gives me a time summary. How much time did they invest in asking questions and listening versus how much time did they invest in talking and telling the story of their community? It should be 70-30, 70% asking questions, 30% telling their story. Guess what it is in real world? 34% of the time they're asking questions and listening. 66% of their time they're telling all about their community. We still get it wrong. Even after training, which is mediocre at best, I know, I'm the trainer. It just takes repetition. It takes time. It takes discipline. It takes consistency. It takes a little bit of introversion. It takes intentionality to say, I'm going to do it differently. If I have a 1-hour experience coming in today, I'm going to devote 40 minutes just sitting and talking and asking questions of that family. And if they ask me why I'm asking them questions versus giving them a tour, I know the answer. And the answer is because I want to customize this experience to you and your parents' needs, because that's what you deserve, customer. And the customer will go, well, thank you. I appreciate that. You can continue with your questions. It'll happen every time like that, or some version of that. Nothing more powerful than deep discovery. And oh, by the way, deep discovery, this first standard, the standards are all interconnected and interdependent. They are. But standard number 1, deep discovery, triggers the rest of the standards to even happen. They don't happen without deep discovery. So asking questions and listening carefully to their answers. And if we do poorly here, we're likely to give them our solution versus the solution that they are looking for. Let me tell you a quick story. There's a church here in town in Louisville. It's called Southeast Christian, because deep discovery also allows us to, it has many other benefits besides just finding out what the customer needs from us. But there's a pastor at Southeast Christian Church here in town, which, by the way, the church can hold 9,000 people. It's a huge church. And I don't go to that church, but I have friends who do, and I've been to that church, and I know their pastor, Dave Stone, their former pastor. I know him a little bit, but he tells a funny story about asking questions and listening to the answer, because he's got 9,000 parishioners there with him on a Sunday morning. And so he can't really say, hey, if anybody wants a one-on-one prayer, come on down. We call that an altar call in the Baptist faith. He can't do that because it's just logistically impossible. But one day he said, I just felt like I needed to do it. He said, so I did. And he's up on the stage and he said, if anybody wants a one-on-one prayer, come on down. And he said, this gentleman just sprinted down the aisle toward him. And he thought, oh no, what have I done here? And he leans down to the gentleman and he says, can I pray for you? And the gentleman said, I really do need your prayers, Dave. Dave said, what can I pray for you about? He said, well, if you could pray for my hearing, that's what I really need prayer for. And so Dave put his hands over this gentleman's ears and he says, beautiful, eloquent prayer, like only Dave Stone can say. And then he stands up and he says, I hope that makes you feel better. And the gentleman looked up at him and said, well, it does make me feel better, Dave, I guess, but my hearing's not till next Tuesday. So we're a little bit early with the prayer. You see, the word hearing has multiple meanings, yes? Yes, it could mean hearing. Then again, it could mean a court date also. Words have meaning. Our job is to find out what it means to our customer. For example, what if a customer just says something like this? I'm here looking at your torch home because I want my mom to be happy. A typical salesperson at that point is probably going to say, well, let me tell you all about our activities program. In fact, let's get up and let's go take a look over there. We're having an activity going on right now. What's wrong about that? What did that salesperson do wrong? Because that is so wrong on so many different levels.
But you don't know what makes his mom happy.
Ding, 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 ding. So then we introduced this concept called funneling. And funneling is nothing more, sorry. Funneling is nothing more than asking a sequence of questions, follow-up questions, if you will, that allow the customer to give more specific information. So if a customer says, I'm looking for a place that will make my mother happy, that's not the end of our discovery. That's the beginning of our discovery. And remember that one phrase that my gentleman friend said? I teach them to ask 1,000 questions, with the most important question being, tell me more. Somebody says, I want my mom to be happy. We should have a response of, tell me more about what you mean by happy. Or tell me what makes your mother happy. Or can you tell me a time when your mom was happy recently? Or what does happy look like? Any way that you want to say it, it doesn't matter. But if we ask this sequence of follow-up questions, sorry, trying to get to the right slide, this is important, folks, with each follow-up question, building the specificity from the answer before, we will finally get down to the very specific need that the customer is looking for. And why don't the customers just share with us right off the bat specifically what they're looking for their loved one or for themselves? Why don't they do that?
They don't trust us.
Well, they don't trust us? That's a great answer. I don't know who said it, but you just got chocolate. But there's another reason. They don't trust us yet with the facts, but there's another reason. And an even
They
more
don't know what
important
they
reason.
want.
They don't yet know themselves. This is something we call self-discovery. Again, being a child psychology major and working on my master's degree toward that, I know all about self-discovery. Self-discovery means we need to give children or adults or anybody, we need to give them the space and the grace to think through their answers and to think through their issues. They may just say, I just want assisted living for my mom. I've read all about it. That's all I want. We can't fall into that trap. We must ask them, well, tell me what you mean by assisted living, because that could very easily mean they just want trays of food brought to their apartment versus coming to a communal dining room. Who knows? Their words mean what they mean them to mean. You have to find out that meaning. And the way that we do that is by giving them time, 70-30 rule, but also by asking them follow-up questions that allow us to get to the specifics of what the customer is looking for. Again, space and grace. Again, self-discovery, allowing them to come to grips with this. And sometimes it's a very emotional time in discovery. There may be a lot of tears. There may be a lot of, I just don't know what I want for my mother, but here's what I do know. I don't want her to live like she's living anymore. You just got an answer, folks. Your follow-up question would be, tell me a little bit of how she's living now. You see how it works? You don't have to pre-plan any questions. All you have to do is listen to the customer's answer, formulate a follow-up question based on their answer, and you'll work your way down from ambiguous to specific every time. Now, there's a lot of other things that we could say about this. One of them, though, is that the 70-30 rule is almost always ignored. You can't ignore it. This is the first thing, perhaps, behaviorally, that you might slip on. If you really drink the Kool-Aid today and you go, I'm going to try what that guy said. It sounded right, and I'm going to do it. This is the one you'll struggle with the most, at least what I have found. Because we get so darn excited to tell the torch story or to tell our story that we don't give the customer enough time to tell their story. We have to discipline ourselves not to do that. So look at this as a continuum. It's not a linear process. discovery is not linear. In other words, we don't ask questions and then we tell our story and then we're done. We ask questions called obtaining in this model. This is a child psychology model, by the way. We verify throughout just by asking the customer, are we on the same page? Am I hearing you correctly? And the transmit part is the small part there at the bottom left, which is where we tell our story. So we hear the customer story, we verify the customer story for 70% of the time, and then the remaining 30%, which on a time study, that would be about 15 minutes out of a 1-hour sales call, 1-hour experience. We would then actually show them around our community based on what they have shared with us during the 70% of time. Again, you'll struggle with this. Try it. Be prepared with your answer when your customer asks, why are we just sitting here? I thought we were going to look around today. We are going to look around, but I want to make sure I'm showing you the things that are appropriate for you because that's what you deserve, customer. Give you a quick example. My mother was diagnosed as an aquaphobic. That's really a thing. She had a fear of water, not just a fear. I mean, like it was debilitating. She couldn't see water, a body of water, without really having physical anxiety because she almost passed away in a drowning incident at 2 years old. It's a long story I won't bore you with, but I almost lost my mom before I ever even knew my mom. How many times do you think Senior Living Community showed us the pool during our tours? Out of the 10 communities that did a poor job with my mom, 5 of them showed us a pool. And I held on to my mom's arm and go, we really don't want to see the pool. And the salesperson was so disappointed because they wanted to show their pool because they were so excited about the pool. And everybody loves the pool, right? No. We can't show the parts of the community that we think are awesome. We need to show the parts of the community that the customer says they're looking for and meets their needs. So this is actually and this is going to work, darn it. I'm so sad the last one didn't work. This is actually what a funnel might look like. And again, if you ever get to attend a 2.5-day training with me, we'll go into this in a lot more depth. And these are just some extra specific parts of the funneling process, very deep and very psychological. But all it really is asking sequential questions to get from the ambiguous information that we really can't do much with to the specific information that allows us to craft a meaningful, memorable, and unique experience for our customer. I live in Kentucky, as I've told you guys before, so the Kentucky Derby is a big thing. We're down to the Derby. It's on for a year. It's the 150th Kentucky Derby this year, so they're making a big deal about it. In 2018, I got to meet the jockey of the winning horse. His name was Always Dreaming. I won a little bit of money on this horse. I was really excited to meet John Velasquez. He's the jockey, still a jockey, Hall of Fame jockey, really nice Christian man too. He's a great guy. But John Velasquez and I had about a 2-minute encounter, which I thought was interesting because it was after he had won the Derby with Always Dreaming. And I said to him, I said, John, I said, congratulations on your Derby win. He said, thank you. And I said, how'd you win it? I said, Always Dreaming wasn't favored. I said, how'd you win it? He said, 8 ounces, just 8 ounces. And I thought, what? That's the weirdest answer I've ever heard. But I knew I needed to funnel that. And I said, what do you mean by 8 ounces? And he said, well, do you know anything about horses? I said, I do. He said, horses' tongues. He said, the bit in the horse's mouth weighs 8 ounces. And I thought, where's this going? And I said, tell me more about this. And he said, well, if you control a horse's tongue, you can control where he goes. And Always Dreaming, I knew all I had to do was control his tongue attached to his head, keep him facing forward, he would be fine. All I could think about is if I could control salespeople's tongues, the world would be so much better because tongues, nurses on the call, you'll remember this, are made up of 8 muscles. But there's one thing that the tongue has that no other muscle in your body has. And that's that it does not have lactic acid absorbers. It doesn't get tired. God messed up. Tongues don't tire. Our tongues don't have the ability to get tired. Our jaws can, our legs can, our other body parts can. Tongues can't tire. So we have to understand that. And we have to bite our tongue. Let the customer do the talking. A friend of mine told me, he said, tongue should have two things on them. They should have speed bumps. We don't talk too quickly. And they should have calluses. Because you should always bite your tongue. When you want to share something with a customer, bite your tongue. Let the customer continue to talk. Because as soon as you start sharing information with your customer, they want to hear more about that information. And you did not get the holistic picture of that family. Make sure that you've gotten the holistic picture before you ever start sharing information about your community. Let me see if this one's going to work. And again, sorry, I didn't test these things beforehand. They worked yesterday, but they're not working so well today. If this works, I'll stop it and I'll give you the backstory on it. Let's see if it's going to work. Oh, looks like it's going to work. Ooh, ooh. Okay, hang on. All right, hang on. Oh gosh, now I've messed everything up. Help. Let me tell you the backstory. I think I can get back to this story. This was a video clip. You guys know TED Talks? Know TED Talks? I love me some TED Talks. I do. And this one came from a guy, and shoot, I have his book here somewhere because I ordered the book. I got so excited about it. It's here somewhere. His name is John, or not John. Yeah, his name is Will Guidara. And he had one called Unreasonable Hospitality. And this video clip that you're getting ready to see in a moment made me buy his book, because he's the owner of a 4-star Michelin rated restaurant in New York City. And one day he had 4 foodies that came into his restaurant, and he's the owner, but being the owner, he does all kinds of things, including busting tables. So one day he was busting the table of these 4 gentlemen who had come to New York City for a food experience. And he overheard a conversation, and he realized that he could create a meaningful, memorable, unique experience for them based on what he overheard. So let's listen to what Will has to say to us. If I can get back to that. Sorry. Okay, think we're there. Everybody still good? Everybody with me? All right, let's listen in.
On the share screen, if you hit share audio, it'll share through Zoom.
Uh-oh, I'm hearing something. What was that?
If on the share screen, so we're just seeing the LinkedIn profile right now, but if you hit the share and on the share screen select share audio, the little box down in the corner, the audio should come through.
Okay, your screen sharing. Where's the box again?
Should be lower left.
Lower left. I don't see. I see mute. Oh gosh. I just see the bar up there that says mute, stop video, security, participants.
So there should be a green button lit up that says share screen.
Oh, share sound? Yeah, it says your screens. Can you guys see the picture on your screen?
No. Now we're seeing the LinkedIn.
Okay, hang on. I may have a solution here. Let's see.
As I possibly could, I walked gracefully back into the kitchen, dropped off the plates, and then literally ran out the front door and down the...
We can hear it.
Oh, you still can't see it though?
Correct.
Huh. I've had trouble with audio before, but I've never had trouble with people seeing it. It says you are screen sharing from your computer. All right, well, you're gonna have to listen. Sorry, guys, I don't want to take too much of your time. Remember, this is a gentleman, owns a restaurant, 4 foodies sitting at his table. It's real short anyway. and he finds out that they're looking for a different experience than what they're getting. So maybe if we just listen, we can get the gist
I found
of it.
myself clearing appetizers from a table of 4 foodies on vacation to New York. I overheard them talking. What an amazing trip. We've been to all the best restaurants. Yeah, but the only thing we didn't get to try was a New York City hot dog. As calmly as I possibly could, I walked gracefully back into the kitchen, dropped off the plates, and then literally ran out the front door and down the block to the hot dog cart. I introduced it. To make sure you don't go home with any culinary regrets, a New York City hot dog. They freaked out. I kept on going back to the experience and trying to figure out what happened that, the whole thing went down. Like, what happens that it could happen? First, being present. If I hadn't been present at that table, I never would have heard that throwaway line about the hot dog.
He had
Second,
surgery yesterday. At
it
8
required taking what you do seriously without
period.
taking yourself too seriously.
Placement.
A hot dog at a 4-star restaurant is sacrilegious. But look at the way it made them feel. It required the acknowledgement that if what you're trying to do is give people a sense of genuine belonging, one size fits one. I really do believe I could have comped that table a bottle of vintage champagne and given them a free bucket of caviar, and it would not have had the same impact as that $2 hot dog, because it would not have been specific to them. If you start to look closely enough, you will find opportunities to give people more than they could ever possibly expect all around you. It just requires caring a little bit more and trying a little bit harder.
So hopefully you got at least part of that anyway.
We did, but some people forgot to mute themselves.
Yeah, sorry about that. I heard that too. All right, let me get back to this. All right, I'll work on that, folks. Sorry about that. Will was really making a great point, though. Can everybody hear me again? We're back. We're back. We're good. Yes. Anybody see my screen again? See the screen? Personal connections.
You're back up, Mike. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay,
you're good.
So Will was really making a great point, though. He said, first of all, if we're going to provide an experience, we have to be there. He was really talking about deep discovery. We've got to listen to our customer. Secondly, we need to do the unexpected. Customers walk into your communities, into your homes with very low expectations. My focus groups tell me that every single time. They think it's a glorified nursing home of some sort. Then when they walk in there, they are not expecting to get a meaningful, memorable, unique experience. They're expecting to get a generic tour like everybody else does. Third, it says, when you do that, the only thing that you have to do is just to try it, to do it differently than everyone else. And I have a lot of frustrated salespeople who call me oftentimes post-training, and they say, I'm doing all these things and it's still not working. But usually once we drill down and I say, tell me about, what you're doing here, what you're doing there, usually they're not doing as much as they think they're doing. But oftentimes I've told people, I said, you always cite your competitors and what they're doing. Look at what your competitors are doing and do the opposite of that. I'm telling you, that is a pretty good recipe for success. Our industry is stuck. We're stuck at low conversions. We're stuck in the sea of sameness. We're stuck as becoming more and more a commodity selling machine. We're selling based on price more than ever before. All that stuff has to stop for the short term, medium term, and long term health of our industry. And we're going to continue to talk about how do we create value. But we just finished Value Proposition Setup 101, because deep discovery is our first way that we create value for our customer, by knowing what they value. Does that make sense to everybody? Everybody's going to value something different. Without deep discovery, we'll never know what that different is. Yes, yes, yes?
Yes.
And again, the discovery triggers all of these others. Without discovery, we shouldn't even go to standard number 2, because standard number 2 can't happen unless standard number 1 is done well. So let's talk about standard number 2, and this is called personal connections. Personal connections is also known as creative follow-up. Folks, numbers 2, 3, and 4 are exciting. They're revolutionary. They are absolutely think different based. They're completely different than the way that you perhaps have operated in the past, the way our communities operate in totality in our industry. Because when you're doing deep discovery, you may not have thought of this yet, but you're going to get information from many, many different topics. You're going to get medical information. You're going to get financial information. You're going to get urgency information. You're going to get family dynamics, or are you going to get family dynamics information? You're going to get who's making this decision at the end of the day information. But you're also going to get personal information. One of my colleagues, Tracy Bild, who I talked about before, she calls it the fun stuff. You're going to get the fun stuff. Customers are going to talk about, oh, I used to be a ballroom dance instructor. Oh, I used to be involved at the University of Michigan Alumni Association. Oh, I used to play college lacrosse and I loved it. Oh, I used to knit things for the people in my church. You're going to get the fun stuff from our customers. We call that personal connections, the fun information that we get from discovery. Question is, what do we do with that information? So this is a big note-taking opportunity for you two. I'm going to ask you to write down 4 different words and phrases during this standard, if you would. And those 4 phrases start with the word glimpse. And we've already talked about that word quite a bit. Let me say it one more time. We create meaningful, memorable, and unique experiences to give our customers a glimpse, a taste, if you will, of what life could look like at your home, at your community, at Torch. We've got to give them that glimpse so that they know they can trust us and they don't have to fear us. I'll give you a example of giving a customer a glimpse into what life could look like. Real case example. I have a company that I consult with in Missouri. And if you know anything about St. Louis, Missouri, you know it's St. Louis Cardinals baseball country. Go Cardinals. I happen to be a Cardinals fan myself, so it all works out. But one of our sales director there one day told me a story. She said, I had a gentleman that came in with his daughter, and the daughter took me aside and said, Dad will never move here, because he just bought the MLB package, and every single night he sits down and watches the Cardinals during baseball season, and that's what he lives for. So this team heard that. That was the personal connection that they had with him, and they thought, what are we going to do with that? How are we going to give him a glimpse into what his life could look like? So this very savvy sales director went to stayed at the community that evening and went to the common area where she knew 3 gentlemen that lived in that community, watched the Cardinals game every single night. You see, the community also had the MLB package on their cable network. So she went there to these 3 gentlemen and she said, do you mind if I take a video on my phone of you guys watching the game? And if you don't mind looking at the camera, and one of you, his name was Bill, looking at the camera and just saying, hey, Bob. Bob was the prospective resident's name. Hey, Bob, come join us. We got the Cardinals on the tube here. Come watch the game. She did that. She sent the video to Bob and his adult daughter. Do you think that had an impact? Do you think that gave Bob a little glimpse into, wait a minute, if I move to that senior living community, I can still watch the Cardinals on TV? And oh, by the way, I have 3 buddies now to watch it with. Folks, that's what making a personal connection and creatively following up on that personal connection is all about. Yes? Everybody with me on that? I love that story. And there's 150 more I could tell you because I've written them down. We still with me, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The enthusiasm on that was great.
Yes.
The second thing that personal connections does, oh, I see it. Oh, somebody's, oh, yep. The 2 P's. I like that. That's good. The second thing that personal connections does, it gives them a lifelong commitment from us, not just a one-time sentiment. I know that's a lot to write down, but personal connections, creative follow-up, if you will, shows the customer a lifetime commitment, not a one-time sentiment. In other words, what if Bob moved into the senior living community, but the sales director never introduced him to those 3 men, never let him, never made that connection so they could watch TV together and watch the Cardinals? Well, that would be a one-time sentiment. That would be manipulation. That would be typical selling. That would be wrong. Instead, by making personal connections with this gentleman and his daughter, we made a lifelong commitment that you can continue to live your life here, including watching the St. Louis Cardinals on our MLB package. The third thing that personal connections does, it gives the customer a transitionary bridge to our community. My mother probably only struggled with one area of the move from her home to her senior living community, and that was just leaving her home. She had lived there for 40 plus years with my dad. Not easy to make that transition, folks, and we all know that. You guys know it much better than I do. But how can we help bridge that transitionary difficulty? Let me tell you a different story. I had a director of housekeeping. This was a long time ago, folks, when I used to be a salesperson in a community. And her name was Sophia. And she came to me almost on the first day that I joined that community. And she said, I want to be a salesperson. I've always wanted to be a salesperson. And I thought, what's wrong with you? But she wanted to be a salesperson. So I needed to help her with that. Tried to discourage her, but she was insistent. So one day I was actually going out on a home visit to a Mrs. Robinson. I'll never forget Mrs. Robinson. But I was going to a home visit with Mrs. Robinson just to drop something off. I don't remember what it was. And I asked Sophia if she wanted to go with me because it's a sales call. And she said, absolutely, I want to go. So we drove to Mrs. Robinson's house and we got there and Sophia started kind of taking over the sales call, which was great. Sophia started asking questions. And one of the questions she asked, she says, is your carpet brand new, Mrs. Robinson? It's beautiful. And Mrs. Robinson said, no, it's not brand new. In fact, it's quite old, but I vacuum my carpet twice a day because I love the look of those fresh vacuum lines in carpeting. And I did it right before you two showed up today because I like that look. Well, what did we do when we got back to the community in anticipation of Mrs. Robinson coming and visiting our community the next day? Of course, we vacuumed beautiful vacuum lines into the model apartment. And as Sophia and I led Mrs. Robinson through her face-to-face experience at our community, Sophia at the end of the experience opened up the door and showed this freshly vacuumed carpet in this vacant apartment. And she said, what does this look like, Mrs. Robinson? And Mrs. Robinson looked at Sophia and said, it looks like home. Do you think that helps soften the transition between Mrs. Robinson living in her own home to moving into a new home? Freshly vacuumed carpet was our bridge, was our personal connection that we made. And folks, this may sound like, I don't know how I would do that. Here's how you do it, by doing deep discovery first. And customers will tell their story and you're taking notes like crazy. And then once that experience is over, you're going to think about, what did I connect with this person with, and how can I creatively follow up? And remember to give them a glimpse to what their life could look like, to provide that transitionary bridge, and to also show this is a lifelong commitment that we're making to you, customer. The last thing that this does is it shows our customers that we want them. The apathy that was displayed for my mother, it was unbelievable. When we visited 10 communities, like I shared with you guys before, we visited 11. We chose one. The other 10 were very apathetic. You know, they would say things like, well, call us if you need us, because we would love to have you live with us, Mrs. Marlow. And my mother would walk out and she'd go, they didn't want me to live there. And I go, your problem sounded like that to me too, Mom. We need to let our customers know that we want them. And by creating a meaningful, memorable, and unique experience, don't miss this, folks. By creating a meaningful, memorable, and unique experience, that in and of itself says, we want you. We're doing all of this work because we want you to live with us, because we think that your life is going to be better with us. Let me say one more thing about that. That word unique has a kind of a dual meaning. We create a unique experience for that customer. That's true. But that also means we can never create the same experience for the next customer, or the next customer, or the next. Everybody gets a unique experience because everybody is a unique individual. So think about this, and we're going to move on. The overall thing that we want to create for someone is a meaningful, memorable, unique experience. think about personal connections as the individual meaningful, memorable, and unique experience. In other words, they're little tiny things that we do for our customers, like videotape residents watching a baseball game, like vacuuming our carpet and making that a big deal when the person is face to face in our community. Those are the things that we do that are little building blocks that collectively create the overall meaningful, memorable, unique experience. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm highly medicated. Highly medicated. So who knows if I've made any sense today at all? Can somebody at least tell me they're good? Yes?
Yes.
All right, I'm only hearing one voice though. I need 14 voices. All right, here we go. Let's talk about standard number 3. And this one I absolutely love. And I know you're thinking, he loves them all. He keeps saying that. It's kind of like children. I love all my children. I do, and my grandchildren. Team selling is really closely related to personal connections. And team selling, and I'll, very honest with you guys, this was written mainly because I've worked in big box communities. I haven't worked in smaller residential communities like you have. But there's only one part of this, and we'll get to it in a few moments, that really needs to change. Everything still applies, whether you're a 1,000 apartment community, which I've worked in those, or if you're a 6 apartment community. I've not worked in those, but I've worked with lots of clients who have that. The standards still work perfectly. And again, there's one exception, which I'll share with you in a few moments. But team selling is a little bit of an exception simply because your teams are not huge. I know that. You don't have department heads for every department. Universal worker is probably something that you guys use quite a bit, and that's perfectly fine because team selling really is a misunderstood standard. When you think about your team and who actually sells on your team, you need to think about, obviously, yourself, an administrator, if you have that, executive director. I don't know what terms that you always use out there. But we also have 2 very large untapped groups that are the most effective sales team members that we have. And they're also the most underutilized team members that we have. And let me give you the backstory on that. I think I've already shared with you guys that I love speaking to you guys. I do. It's an honor to speak to you guys. I really mean that, whether you choose to believe it or not. I am always privileged to speak to heroes like you guys. I am. And I appreciate John's request for me to do this today. But I've also spoken at larger groups. The largest group I've ever spoken to was 3,000. That freaked me out a little bit. But I spoke to the most prominent group I guess I've ever spoken to was the American Healthcare Association. I never thought they'd want to hear from me. But they asked, and I said, absolutely, I will do that. And I was so honored to be there for that conference. But they paired me up with one of their own employees. And I know they did that because they probably thought this guy might go rogue on us. He's kind of untested. So we're going to partner him with Beth. And Beth was Beth Martino, who was the Senior Vice President of Senior Vice President of Public Policy at ACA. She's a big hitter. She actually just left ACA, and I just sent her a note and said, I'm so sorry that you left ACA. But she's doing something else that is really feeding her spirit, and I'm really proud of her. But Beth and I, we co-presented for this presentation at ACA. And Beth actually shared that a survey with me that I wish I would have known 29 years ago when I joined this industry, because it's a very important survey. I do not have the research behind this, folks. All I have is Beth. I know the research happened, but I've never been able to find it in print form. But it doesn't make it any less legitimate. ACA back in and don't quote me on this, but I think it was 2018, maybe 2019. I know it was pre-pandemic. They did a survey of 800 adult daughters, all shopping for senior living. And they asked one question of those adult daughters. And the question was this: who do you trust the most when buying senior living? And I thought, wow, that's a fascinating study. I can't wait to hear the answer to that. And I thought the answer would be the executive director or the head of nursing, or who knows, maybe the salesperson. No, that's never going to happen. But I thought, who knows, maybe it could happen. But the answers, the top 2 answers really surprised me. Answer number 1 was the family members of current residents are the people that we trust the most when shopping for senior living. And that blew my mind because I never thought that's a lie. Let me take that lie back. That's not true. I did think of that before. When I was actually a sales director in a community, every single day I had somebody, either a resident or a resident's family member, doing some kind of creative follow-up for me every day. So I was doing that just, I don't know, I got lucky, I guess. But ACA study said the people that are the most influential, that are most trusted in a senior living community are the family members of current residents. That really speaks a lot. First of all, it says that, let me go ahead and give you the number 2 audience that they said. The number 2 answer to that were your residents themselves. So collectively, residents and the family members of your residents were number 1, and it wasn't even close as to who came in number 3 and number 4 and number 5. There were only 5 answers to the question. So what does that mean? That means that we, as associates in a senior living community, need to somehow connect our residents, family members, and our residents themselves with our prospective residents and with their family members. And remember, those family members of prospective residents are now making 87% of all the buying decisions. I actually saw a study the other day that said that's gone up to 93% of all buying decisions. I wish I could answer the question of why on that. I'm not sure why. I think I know, but it would take too long to explain all of that. They're making the vast majority of decisions. And who would let's say a 55-year-old adult daughter looking for a place for her mom, who do you think she would trust the most? Probably a 55-year-old adult daughter who had already made the decision to move their mom into your community. So why not connect those 2 up? Why not use note-taking opportunity here, folks? Why not use the relationship equity that you've built with that family member of your current resident? Why not tap into that relationship equity and give them a call and say, hey, we have a family member who is asking a lot of the same questions you asked a year ago before you moved your mom into our community. And I'm answering those questions, but I know she would love to ask you some questions as well. Are you willing to accept a phone call from someone like that? Now, you may think, would they say yes to that? I can tell you with my hand up to God, I never got a no from a resident's family member when I asked them to do something follow-up wise for me. They never said no. And I don't know why. I mean, I guess I just had that strong of a relationship with them. But they were always agreeable to helping me. And it didn't have to be a phone call. They could send a text on your behalf. They could write a note on your behalf. They could agree to come to your home and be there when a prospective family comes through for an experience. That's a really powerful one. You could actually go to that adult daughter's home and actually videotape her giving a testimonial for how much she appreciates what her Torch community is doing for her loved one. There's a million ways that we can utilize that relationship equity. And again, if you want to follow research, that's the folks that you need to connect with. These folks who, we're going all the way back to the start, guys. That's a way to build trust between people who have already chosen your community and people who inherently distrust and fear your community because of what the media has said about our industry. You can do the exact same thing with your residents. Now, some of you may have very high acuity residents, and maybe they can't get too involved in some of these follow-up things. But there was never a day in 6 years that I sold directly in senior living. Never did I walk out of the community that night without having a resident, knowing a resident was going to write a note or was going to knit something with somebody's initials in it. That's another story for another time. Or was going to agree to be there, to be available that next day to show their apartment to this family who's coming into the community. And how would I know which resident or which resident's family member to connect to which prospective resident and which prospective resident's family member? How would I know which ones to connect with who? Deep discovery. What I found out during deep discovery made me make those connections. Maybe they had the same hobbies. Maybe they went to the same church. Maybe they were on the same board of directors at the YMCA. Who knows? You'll find that information out during discovery, and then you'll go back to your memory bank. You'll go back to your whatever, however you keep track of all these details of your residents and family members, and you'll say, oh, I can connect those two. And think about the power of connecting someone with a peer who's already made that difficult decision to choose your community. Think about how powerful that could be to share that relationship with another person who's also considering making this very difficult relationship. I want to pause here for any questions you might have. Folks, I hope right now you're thinking, whoa, if you've never heard me speak before, I hope you're thinking, whoa, that opens up a whole new way to move forward with my community. If you have heard me speak before and you've heard this before, you got to ask yourself this question. Am I doing that? Do I do that for every single experience that comes through my door? Now, the answer to that question might be no, because some people that come through your door, let's just face facts. They're not the right fit for our community. They're just not the right one. I'm not going to put a ton of effort into folks like that. I'm still going to follow up because things could change on their end and they might become appropriate for my community, financially, medically, whatever the case may be. But for anybody that is appropriate for my torch community, my torch home, I'm going to start making those connections with my team, residents, families, other workers in the community, my executive director, whatever, whoever, all of the above. Reach out to that person to further give them that glimpse into what life could look like in our community. Questions about that? I'm either being highly effective or extremely boring. I don't know which one. So I'm going to go with highly effective. Yay, we're going to be positive today.
Highly effective for sure. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're sweet. I appreciate that. And again, hearing it is one thing, doing it is a completely other thing. And that's what I really hope. Oh, thank you. That was very kind. And I really don't feel sick. I really appreciate that kind note of that chat, but I really feel fine. I just sound awful. Well, I mean, I don't feel great, but I'm going to bed right after this is really what I'm saying. Actually, I'm going to the University of Kentucky versus University of Florida basketball game tonight. But I've already told my wife it's an hour-and-a-half drive there, an hour-and-a-half drive back. But I've already told her I will not have a voice. I will not listen to you tonight. Tonight's going to be solitude and quiet in our car. But I am going to the basketball game, so cheer for the Wildcats tonight, okay? One more quick story, and then we're going to move on to standard number 4. And this is one of my favorite stories, too. This is a story about Bill. Bill's my buddy. I used to work for Atria. You guys may or may not have heard of Atria before. They actually have a huge presence in Texas, so I bet you've run across them somewhere. But I was the vice president of sales at Atria. And I had been in the field pretty early. I'd been in the field pretty recently before I was promoted to a vice president position. And I didn't want to lose that field experience. I didn't want to get too far away from what the real world president, but I didn't want my, my approach. I didn't want what I was going to do as a VP to be different than what happens on the ground. That was a long-winded way to say I wanted to stay in touch with what was going on day to day in our communities. So whenever we had an opening as a sales director, I would go to that community for 6 weeks and I would sit in the sales director chair. And the very first time I did that, I went to a community in Texas, great country of Texas. And actually it was a suburb of Houston and called Tanglewood. And the community was called Tanglewood. And I went to this community and the day that I walked in, became their 6-week sales director, a gentleman walked through my door and introduced himself as Bill. He actually had a cowboy hat on. He had the whole Texas thing going. I loved Bill and grew to love Bill a lot. And Bill walked into my office and he said, I hear you're the new guy. I said, I am the new guy. And he said, well, my name's Bill. And I said, well, my name's Michael. It's nice to meet you, Bill. And he said, great. Nice to meet you too, Michael. What can I do for you? And I thought, what? What do you mean, what can you do for me? And he said, what can I do for you? And I said, I'm not sure I understand your question, Bill. I said, you live here. I know you're a new resident here. So you've already helped us because you live here. He said, no. I know what you do for a living. I know you want to fill this place up, right? And I said, well, I do. And he said, how can I help you? I thought, well, Bill, what do you have in mind? And then he sat down in a chair in front of me. And for about the next hour and a half, Bill shared all of his ideas how we were going to fill this community. It was hilarious. But Bill and I became very close. And every day we had our meeting, which was led by him. And he would walk in my office. He goes, what are we going to do today? In other words, he was saying, how can I help you with team selling? That's really what he was saying. So Bill became a ambassador. And I had not started the ambassador program at Atria yet. And it all started with Bill. Bill was the very first one. I told Bill, I said, Bill, I'm the vice president of sales in my real job, but I'm here for 6 weeks and I'm going to try to work and, help this community out. One of the ideas I have is I'd like to take some of our residents who are willing to help us and make them ambassadors. Are you interested in that? And he goes, oh, where do I sign up? Tell me what I need to do. I made for him a badge, which again, this is now a national program. There are thousands of people in the Atria Ambassador program, but Bill was the very first one. And I made up a badge for him and it just had 2 words on it. It said Bill and Ambassador. It had the Atria logo on it. And Bill walked around the community, and anytime I had an experience come through, Bill would help me with that. He would always come to my office after experiences and he'd go, okay, how are we going to follow up with this family? What are we going to do? What's our plan? And he would get involved in that plan. He would write notes. He would get other residents to write notes. He had his family, specifically Sarah, his daughter. He had her taking phone calls. We would love to have a community full of Bills. He embraced the team selling aspect of it. Well, I moved back to Louisville after 6 weeks. Lost touch with Bill a little bit, but one day I got a call from his daughter, Sarah, and said, Mike, just I want you to know that my dad passed away this morning, and he wanted to make sure that you knew about that. And I said, I am so sorry. I was brokenhearted because Bill was one of those residents you just get close to, as we tend to do. And I asked Sarah for the details, and she shared them. And I didn't tell her I was coming to the funeral, but guess what? I was going to the funeral. You couldn't have kept me away from that funeral. So I walked into the funeral home, and there was Sarah, the first person I saw, and I went over to her and gave her a hug. And we chatted a little bit, and she said, I'm so glad you came. You didn't have to come. I said, yeah, I did. I said, your dad meant a lot to me. And she said, let's go over and see Dad. I'm not a big fan of open caskets, guys. I'm just not. I'm sorry, I'm not. But she wanted me to go over and say my goodbyes to her dad, and I was very willing to do that. But when I walked over to Bill laying there in his best Sunday outfit, as he would have called it, I saw him there with his name tag on, Bill, Ambassador. And I looked at Sarah and I said, Bill's taking that name tag to heaven? And I was crying like a little baby. And she said, of course he's taking that name tag to heaven. You gave him purpose in his later life that he never thought he would have again. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm thinking, what the what? Bill lived there for 7 years. I only knew him for those 6 weeks. Bill lived there for 7 years, and he actually brought in 14 move-ins into that community. Bill was directly responsible for 14 move-ins and probably influenced many, many, many more. Bill did me the favor, but Sarah kept saying how much of a favor I did for him. You see how this symbiotic relationship we can have with our customers? We can allow them to remain purposeful, all the while helping us. Isn't it nice when the right thing to do is also good for our business? And folks, I'm a firm believer that if you are operationally excellent, you can have a lot of Bills in your communities who feel like they owe us something. I really don't think they owe us anything, but they feel like they owe us something. And family members feel like they owe us something. Tap into that. Get them to reach out to your prospects, and you're going to find out your conversions come faster. They become much more personal. It's just a beautiful way to move your community forward. I have to move on because I was about ready to cry, so I got to move away from Bill. Let's talk about standard number 4. And if you were listening and you remembered what I said, this is kind of the apex of the training. This is the climactic moment. And this is standard number 4 that has the one aspect of it that doesn't really fit beautifully with your torch homes. Doesn't matter though. It really does. It has no effect on this. But the daily strategy meeting is nothing more than a daily discussion, strategic discussion about your top 10 families who are going to be your next move-ins into your home. Now, that's the thing that might not work beautifully in your communities. Again, it doesn't change the effectiveness at all. You might not have 10 families that you're anticipating moving in the next 30, 60, 90 days. Doesn't matter. You can do this with one family. You should do this with every family. So let's talk about what this looks like. Well, it's a daily meeting of all your team, and that can be as many people as you can, and they're there for a very specific reason. They're there to help you with this board. We call this the hot board. And this hot board, and I can send you a copy of this also, has 4 columns in that hot board. The 4 columns are this. Column number 1 is your top 10 families. Now you're going to see there's only 5 families here. This is done on a dry erase board in our communities. On the backside, there would be 5 other families on this board as well, but this is 5. So that first column you'll notice is not only the prospect's name, but also their children's name. Why their children's name? Because they're making most of the buying decisions these days. Plus, they should be treated like customers because they are customers. So we need to populate columns 2, 3, and 4 for everybody in column number 1. So what do those other columns look like? Well, column number 2 is their top 3 needs. 3 is an arbitrary number, folks. This could be the top 2 needs. It could be the top 7 needs. It is what it is. But during discovery, you're going to find out what this family needs. By the way, sometimes does adult daughter have a different need set than mom? And do they sometimes do this as you're working with them? And the answer is, oh yeah, that happens a lot. You know where I want that to happen? I want it to happen with me, because I can help them, guide them by my asking questions and listening to the answer, which we call discovery. I can guide them through that. And maybe at the end of the day, we come up with some kind of a commonality of needs. So that's kind of that goes all the way back to deep discovery. So let me not get too far off topic. But during discovery, you're going to come up with some needs, and you can look through these at your leisure. Some of the needs are financial, some of the needs are medical, some of the needs are urgency. Column number 3 is where we also list needs, but these are personal connections needs. These are those fun things that we've talked about several times. Let me give you another example here. Look at this first person. Sorry, I'm spitting all over my keyboard now. You're probably thinking, this is the most unprofessional guy I've ever heard. He's coughing, he's blowing his nose, he's spitting all over. Sorry, you get what you get with me. Sorry. It's informal, folks. What can I say? And I'm from Kentucky. What can I say? If you look at this first family, it's Richard and Millie Reese, who are real people, as are all the people on this board. I remember Richard Reese, and I wasn't the sales director. This is from my sales director at this community in Lexington, Kentucky. This was Richard Reese, and he said to our sales director, he said, you know what really, and her sales director name was Katie. You know what really makes me alive, Katie? I love to sit on my porch in a rocking chair and sip on Woodford Reserve bourbon, because it comes directly from God. He said that. And he said, that's what I want to do. Well, Katie heard that. She took it to her team and said, hey guys, we need to give this gentleman a glimpse, there's that word again, into what his life can continue to be here at Richmond Place in Lexington, Kentucky. And the team came up with a beautiful, simple, but beautiful idea. All they did is they took a rocking chair, put it on the patio of one of their vacant apartments, put a bottle of Woodford Reserve bourbon in there. Hey, it's Kentucky, folks. And they, don't miss this next part, they put a big tag on it that said reserved for Richard Reese. And they took a picture of it. And they sent it to Richard. They also sent it to Millie, his wife. And on that picture, they wrote the caption. Again, this is something you're going to want to write down. Katie wrote on there, this, Richard, is what you can expect from us when you move to Richmond Place. You think that was powerful? I need a moment on that one, folks. That's a powerful, creative follow-up. That's a powerful personal connection. That's a powerful action based on what you found out during deep discovery. That is a simple glimpse that we could give our customer. So my question to you is, why wouldn't we do things like this in your community, in your home? And the answer needs to be, we're gonna. And we're gonna do it all the time. Like, this makes sense. That's where we need to be in the next hour and a half that we're together. Critically important that you understand our customers distrust and fear us. We need to show them what life is going to be like, and that life is going to come from what you found out during discovery. But you're going to notice as you read through this list too, it wasn't just one person doing these actions. And think I called her Katie, by the way. It's Jamie. Sorry, medication. It's other people taking other actions with these families too. And this is a community that probably has, it's a large community, probably has 700 families in their lead bank. But they work with 10 families at one time. And as these families move in, they erase that family from the board, they bring another family up, and the team selling, the personal connections begins all over again. So let me go back a couple of slides. This is a meeting that you should have daily. All of your department heads, and again, I understand you don't have a ton of department heads, but all your teams should get together. And this is a 10-minute maximum meeting. Most meetings last 3 or 4 minutes. They're really quick. And the only thing that we discuss in this meeting is, how are we going to move forward with each one of these 10 families that are on our board, or 3 families that are on our board, or 1 family that's on our board? Column number 1 doesn't matter. We want to do this for all of our families. And when we do this, and when the team helps us do this, remember, team doesn't just mean employees. It also could mean your residents and residents' families. Yes, yes, yes. Please understand that. Then we have conversion rates that are off the charts. Remember, we convert 1 out of 10 currently as an industry. The research that this is based on, which is what we're going to talk about next, says you should convert 1 out of 2. Does anybody remember my company, Watercrest, what our conversion rate was? 46%. We're converting 1 out of 2. We're doing this. And by the way, I'm still not satisfied with that. I think we should be converting even a higher percentage. And I have a call with all my communities tomorrow at 9:30. And I'm going to tell them, awesome job. We are probably the highest converting company in the entire senior living industry, but I want more. I want to get higher than that. I do. And I know we can, but I'm pretty happy with where we are now. I'm really excited where you could be, though, if you take these standards really seriously. So let's take a step back and talk about, what research did this come from? Her name is Dr. Margaret Wilde, W-Y-L-D-E. She's probably the smartest woman in senior living. She's the CEO of ProMatura, the big think tank in senior living. And she did research all the way back in 2016. I know I've referenced this, but now I'm going to get a little bit more detailed with it. This is research that you should request. This isn't for customers' eyes. This is for you and your team's eyes. Because this talks about this new approach to selling. Remember, velocity and volume, the more phone outs you make and the more tours you lead, the more your business is going to grow. And remember, tours is their word, not ours. Dr. Wild said after looking at 302,000 sales interactions, that doesn't work. It's ineffective. That's why we convert 1 out of every 10 families. Time and skills does work, and we can convert 1 out of 2 families. So if you're already sick of taking notes today, I get it. But write 6 more words down for me if you would, because her entire research can be, synopsis of that could be 6 words. Here they are. More time, fewer people, better results. More time, fewer people, better results. Fewer people means we only work with a handful. Dr. Wild said 10 maximum. So you could work with 1 or 3 or 7 or 10, but not more. Your board needs to just have 10 or less families on it. So more time with those families means that we are going to focus on those families. We certainly are going to focus on them. We're going to get any other associates in our communities, in our homes, to focus on them through creative follow-up. That's an important thing for you to hear. By creative follow-up, to give them that glimpse into what life could look like. And maybe most importantly, we're going to get our residents, and most importantly, we're going to get our residents' family members involved. I hope that when I said residents' family members, I hope a resident's family member popped into your mind and say, I think so-and-so would do that for me. Now you have to determine what that is. Remember, it doesn't have to just be a phone call. Be creative with this. They can do a lot of different things for you. If you're willing, if you have that relationship with them, you're willing to ask them. So let's go back to those 6 words. More time from a lot of different people, using a lot of creative ways to do it. Fewer people, we can only do this with a maximum of 10 families at any one time. Better results. Because again, Dr. Wild says you're going to convert 1 out of every 2 versus 1 out of every 10. So this came out in June of 2016. I was working for a company called LCS at the time. I was their head of training. My boss's name was Liz Bush. She was the senior vice president of sales and marketing. She's a big name in our industry. She's a big player, and she taught me a lot. But she was my boss, and I walked into her office with the research, and I said, Liz, I was right. And she said, well, there's a first time for everything. What were you right about? I said, you know how we're doing our 1031 hot boards in our community? She said, yeah, I know. And I said, you know what I base that on? She said, I've never known. And I said, I based it on, it was just the way that I did it. It was the best way for me to keep track and to serve more people. I said, I just did it. I didn't have any basis to do it. I just did it. It seemed right to me. But now there's research that supports it. And I'm not exaggerating, guys. That when we read the research, there was not a single thing in that research that we weren't already doing. It was weird. It was eerie. We already had our board. We were already using our team, including our residents and residents' family members, for that column 4 next step stuff. We were already doing that. I almost think Dr. Wild had a bug planted in my office because her research validated everything that we were doing. So then I got really excited about it and said, we're going to continue to do this and we're going to do it well. And again, had great success with it at LCS, have great success with it now at Watercrest. You can have great success with it also if you're willing to invest the time to make this change in your community. Time to stop, folks, and to answer any questions that you have, because I've got a couple more things to say about it, and then we're moving on. Question?
Could you spell
Question.
Dr. Wild's name?
W-Y-L-D-E. And again, you can Google it and get the research, or you can send me an email and get the research. I've edited her research and only edited because I took out some stuff that didn't apply. It's just her research just on this one topic. Here's a fun fact for you on this also. That research, the name of the research is Why We Want to Share Our Sales Data. Why we want to share our sales data, because Dr. Wild charges $1 million. I'm making that up, but it's probably not too far off for her to do research like this. If Torch approached her and said, hey, Dr. Wild, could you show us this, could you find out if we're selling correctly in our industry or not? She'd charge you $1 gazillion. I'm a lot cheaper, by the way. But Dr. Wild did this, and she was so excited about the results, she wanted to share it with the industry. So she partnered with a CRM, if you're familiar with that term, an electronic lead bank called Sherpa. Some of you may have heard of Sherpa. And she partnered with them, and they funded her research. And Sherpa is an interesting CRM because, and again, I don't know what CRM you guys use. Ours is Yardi, which is probably the most commonly used one in our industry. But we count how many contacts it takes us to get a move in. Sherpa does something different though. It actually calculates how many hours you invest in a family to get a move in. I think it's fascinating. And on average, in 302,000 sales interactions, it took 10 hours of overall selling time to get an assisted living move in. That doesn't mean 10 hours of the salesperson talking to the family. That means 10 hours of team selling to an entire family, meaning talking to prospective residents, talking to family members, maybe even talking to professionals that might influence them. Maybe they're a physician or social worker in a hospital. It's 10 hours invested in the relationship on average to get a move in. I find that fascinating. Any other questions about that?
On the next
So
steps.
one question,
I'm
what's
sorry.
that?
I said on the next steps, you have dates on there, it looks like.
Yeah.
I see several of the same.
Yeah, and the reason for,
Go ahead.
sorry, I'm sorry, there's a delay and I keep interrupting you. I'm so sorry. Please finish.
No, I was just going to say, are these actions taking place on the same dates?
Yep. This meeting happened on August 8th, 8/8. And Don agreed to do a FaceTime with Richard only. You see that in column number 4. So on 8/9, August 9th, at our daily strategy meeting, Jamie, the sales director, would say, okay, Don, how did that FaceTime go last night with Richard? And he would give us the report. We would erase what's up there now, put the new date up there, and what next steps we were going to do with that family. So that's why this is on a dry erase board. It should be fluid. It should be changing all the time. Now, this board, I should have said this a long time ago. Sorry. This is an aspirational board. You will not be here in the next 6 months. This is big. This is thorough. Jamie's a little anal. Let me say it like that. I love Jamie. I do. She's a great sales director. But she took this and she made this. I mean, I've never seen so much involvement from a department head group. And again, your model's a little bit different, but that's okay. You can easily adapt it to that. But yeah, those dates are there because every day we're going to talk about how did it go yesterday? What are we going to do today? It's a constantly moving board. Thanks for that really good question. Any others? Let me say one more thing, and this is controversial. So John, at the end of this, can say, just delete what Mike just said about that. But in many of my communities, I've taken all the marketing dollars away from them, all of them. And again, big box versus small box. I get it. We don't, in some of our communities, we don't spend a penny on marketing for a year. And we take that money and we use it to help with situations with the people that we have relationship equity. I said that very poorly. Let me say it differently. If somebody, whether it's a fellow associate, a fellow employee, or a resident's family member agrees to do some creative follow-up for me, I want to reward them. I wish they would do it altruistically. I do. I wish they would do it out of the goodness of their heart. And many, many do. But then there's people like Bill at my community in Houston, Texas. And when he gave me a referral, or even when he did some creative follow-up for me, he never asked for money or for a gift or anything, but I gave it to him because we reward people that help us with sales. We do. And so those dollars are much, much better spent getting folks to help us with move-ins rather than creating more generically or more leads that we're probably not going to have time to follow up on anyway. So that's just something you certainly can consider down the road. My mother, and we're going to tell that story in just a moment, but my mother lived in her community for 4 years. She also brought in 14 move-ins in the 4 years that she lived there. Now, let's tell the truth. Did Mom bring in any move-ins? Nope. I did. But every single time they got a move-in in her community, they presented her with $1,000 off in her rent. And every time she did that, she would just get so excited about it. She would just go, yeah, she would have no idea that, well, she did know that I was the one doing it, but she thought she was involved in this, and she was a little bit. But I just always thought it was quite funny that this community recognized that Hey, if people are going to do extra efforts, let's compensate them. Doesn't have to be money. Doesn't have to be rent concessions. Sometimes it's just a gift. Sometimes I would just give personal connections gift to my fellow associates, my employees, because I knew they wanted tickets to the University of Kentucky basketball game. So when they helped me with the move-in, I gave them 2 tickets to a game. It's a beautiful thing. And again, I'm fine with that. You guys may not be, and that's fine. That's okay. It's different strokes for different folks, but I want to compensate folks that will help me grow my business. All right, last chance. Any other questions about daily strategy meeting? Big deal, folks. And your competitors are not doing this because they ignore research. And my prayer is you don't ignore research, because this is the right thing to do for our customers. And isn't it nice when the right thing to do is also good for our business? All right, here we go. Let's talk about the next ones, and we're going to go through these pretty quickly, take another break, and then we'll wrap up. We'll invest our last hour together. So fast follow-up, this is standard number 4. This means that it's also called speed to lead, and speed to lead is nothing more than saying, when you get an inquiry, whether it's off the internet, whether it's a phone in, whether it's a walk-in, we need to follow up with those folks quickly. Research says 30 minutes post-inquiry is the best possible time to follow up. Well, let's be real. We're probably not going to follow up on weekends and evenings within 30 minutes, although the research says we should, and that's hard. But we should be the first person to follow up with that family. Remember, on average, they visit 4 communities. They're going to choose one. There's a lot of research that says the first one that reaches out to them after they do their inquiry has up to a 25% higher chance of getting that move in if you're number 1. So that means we need to be gazelle focused. We need to be ready to go when we get an inquiry to treat it like it is. And that's a golden moment to say, I'm going to begin the process of creating a meaningful, memorable, and unique experience for this family. And it all starts with fast follow-up. I want to follow up with them as quickly as we can. My communities have something called the inquiry response team. We have a director of sales. We have executive directors. We have department heads in each one of the disciplines. And again, I know you don't have those resources, but that's okay. You can find people to follow up. When we get an inquiry, no matter what time of day or night it is, and think about this. If our adult children are doing more of the shopping now, they have jobs. So they're going to be inquiring in the evenings and on weekends more and more and more. And that's the future of our industry. So somehow, some way, you've got to figure out a way that a lead doesn't just sit in a voicemail over the weekend, or your receptionist doesn't say, well, nobody's here that can help you with that today. We'll call you back on Monday. We've got to be better than that, because these families are going to say, it's Friday and I'm not waiting till Monday. I'll call somebody that can help me right now. Fast follow-up is an important part of the future of our industry. And I keep forgetting to change the slide, guys. I do, and I'm so sorry. This one should say persistent and creative follow-up. Now, we've already talked about the creative follow-up piece of it, so let's focus on the persistent for a moment. We believe that you should follow up, period, with all inquiries deserve follow-up. The minimum follow-up should be a handwritten note from you. That's a minimum expectation. After an experience, a handwritten note from you is a minimum expectation, but we can do so much more than that. Research says that we should follow up 5 times in the first 3 days post-inquiry. I shared that to the CFO of my current company now when I was interviewing for the job. And she said to me, she said, well, that sounds like harassment. I can't laugh because it makes me cough. But I think about Joni, and we're dear friends now, and we great colleagues working together. In fact, I have a call with her right after this one. She's a wonderful CFO. But when she asked me that question, it just made me chuckle a little bit. And I said, Joni, I said, you're right. If I called somebody 5 times in the first 3 days after they inquired, that would be harassment. But you have to understand that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about different modalities. In other words, phone calls, text messages, handwritten thank you notes, putting those handwritten thank you notes in Federal Express packages. Folks, if you want to show somebody you want them at your torch home, when you write your thank you notes from your team, put them in a FedEx envelope and send it to them. Doesn't that send a different message than just a handwritten note? Or God forbid, no follow-up at all? Or maybe you could have a resident make a phone call. Or maybe you could invite them in for a face-to-face experience and say, I'm going to introduce you to 2 family members of one of our current residents. And you guys will have some time to chat a little bit also, so you can get a feel for their buying experience in our community. 1,000 different things that you can do for follow-up. And it shouldn't just be one person doing it. It should be several different people doing it. If you do have somebody that's kind of the head of your sales group, they should do it, obviously. But as the administrator, executive director, head honcho, whatever you call them, they should do it as well. And again, using those different methodologies. When my mom shopped for senior living, she received the very next day after she walked out of the community that she ended up moving into, she actually received 5 notes in a Federal Express package, and they all had the words "I promise" on them. They were all from department heads of the community where she would eventually move, and each one of them said, Mrs. Marlow, one of them in particular, I have her note right here on my desk, right here. It was from Gladys, and she was the director of housekeeping at my mom's community. She didn't meet my mom during the experience, but she wrote her a note and said, Mrs. Marlow, my name is Gladys. I'm the director of housekeeping here. I promise. Those words are powerful to our group of folks that we sell to, the demographic that we sell to. Those are powerful words, and I would include them in all your follow-up notes. I promise to keep your apartment exactly the way that you want it. I hope you give me the chance to prove that to you. Love, Gladys. And when my mom got that note, she actually called me and she said, Michael, I just got a Federal Express envelope. I said, you did? And she said, yeah. And I said, who's it from? And she said, it's from that community, that blueberry pie place. More to come on that in a moment. And I said, well, she said, what do you think I should do? And I said, how about opening it? And she goes, that's a great idea. We got a big kick out of that. She opened it up, and there were 5 notes in there from all the department heads that said, I promise to do whatever their particular discipline was about. So we can be as creative as we can be, folks. You need to be creative and tap into the creativity of other people in your community, including residents and residents' family members. Why the persistent piece, though? Because research says if we follow up 5 times in the first 3 days, we have a 44% higher chance of getting that move in. That's a big deal, folks. It is. Let's go to my mom's buying story, and then we'll take our break, and then we'll come back. We'll do the last 2 standards, and then we'll take a dive into our sales process, and we'll call it a day. So if you've heard the blueberry pie story before, you can take a mental break for 7 minutes, because that's how long it takes me to tell this story. But this story I've told thousands of times in my career. It started in 2014, and it's a real story. It's about my mom and about my family's ordeal in buying senior living. And it was an ordeal, folks, it was. But my dad passed away in April of 2014, and my mom and dad lived in a small town called Bowling Green, Kentucky. You've never heard of it, but if you drive a Corvette, which I suspect many of you do, it was built in Bowling Green, Kentucky. It's right on the Kentucky-Tennessee border. And my dad passes away, not unexpectedly, but he passed away, and my mom found herself as a widow. Well, the timing of my dad's death was a little unexpected, and my mom had just retired from her job at the hospital, the local hospital in Bowling Green. And so now she was no longer had a husband. She no longer had a job that she loved. She no longer had a social life because her social life was work. My mom was a big introvert also and didn't have a big support group. So immediately she had a lot of losses in her life. And so I told her, I said, hey, Mom, you're retired, Dad's gone, move to Louisville, come north 2 hours, move to Louisville, you can move in with us. And she said, oh, I'm never going to move in with you and your wife. That was not going to happen. Michael, I think I'm alone. I'm okay. But I don't think so, Mom. And she said, I think I'll be fine. So for a year and a half, she was fine, but she wasn't fine, because I talked to her every day and I knew I could see the decline. Finally, one day in 2016, she called me and she says, okay, I'm ready to start shopping. I said, for what? And she said, oh, I don't know. What's that stuff you call senior living or whatever? I said, you're ready to shop? Are you thinking about it? She goes, I am. She said, I don't want to face another winter alone. I'll try it. And I said, awesome. So for the next 2.5 months, I set up 11 appointments with 11 senior living communities. I can't call them experiences because most of them weren't. But we set up 11 appointments to visit 11 communities. And we usually did 2 or 3 at a time. We did them on the weekends because I traveled every week and I wanted to be there for all of them. So we did them on weekends. The first community we visited was terrible. We were in and out in 25 minutes. We got a generic tour, folks. We did. And it was awful. And my mom walked out and she looked at me, and it really would help if you knew my mom. I wish you had her because she was awesome. But my mom looked at me and she said, this is what you do for a living? Shame on you, Michael. I said, Mom, this is not what I do for a living. This is what I teach against. That was terrible. And she said, it was terrible. She said, I hate that place. I'm never going to move in there. I said, Mom, just, that was bad, but it's going to get better. Folks, I knew it was going to be a bad experience, but I wanted to get her feet wet with one community because I had kind of set this up that community number 2 would be where she would choose, because community number 2 has a lot going for it. It's really near my home. It's very affordable. Not that price was a big deal to my mom, but their rates are very, very good, still are. But the main reason I wanted her to move to this community is because of Karen. And Karen's a friend of my wife and I, and she's the executive director there. And when I called to make the appointment, she said, Michael, she said, I am so excited you're considering us for your mom, and I'm going to give her an experience. I said, great. Karen had actually been through my training, so she knew what to do, and guess what she did? She gave my mom a tour instead of an experience. It wasn't terrible, folks. It wasn't. But it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't what my mom deserved. We walked out and my mom looked at me and she said, so that was a little better, I think. And I go, I'm glad you recognize that, Mom. I said, what'd you think? And she said, it was dark. It's a no. It was dark. I said, what do you mean dark? I said, there's a ton of natural lighting in there. I said, you're not going to find a place with more natural lighting. And she looked at me and she said, I don't mean lighting. I mean, it felt dark in there. And I'll never forget that moment, because the way that team didn't create an experience for her made my mom have this feeling of, they don't really want me there. There's a darkness there. I'll never forget that moment. And I said, well, Mom, I said, that was better than most, but I think we'll find better. And, I'm so glad, you experienced that. By the way, Karen, being a personal friend, you would expect immediately follow-up, right? Right? Never heard from her. I've seen her twice socially. One time she asked me how my mom was doing, and it took everything I could do to say, like, you care. Because if she cared, she would have created a meaningful, memorable, unique experience for my mom, but she didn't. So my mom didn't choose community number 2. She didn't choose 3, 4, 5, or 6 either. 6 was quite the community, because 6 was a life plan community, formerly known as CCRCs, if you've heard that term before. Big community. 6 buildings on their campus, and I'm using that word correctly, buildings. The community was made up of 6 buildings, and this sales director was horrible. He was a guy. He was the only guy we actually had a tour from, and he actually showed my mom every aspect of all 6 of those buildings out there. My mom actually had a new Fitbit on her arm, and at the end of it, she said, I walked 1.6 miles on that tour. It was awful, folks. It was. And I should have intervened and cut the tour short, and I didn't, and that's something I'm still mad at myself about. That one was off the table. Community number 7 was the next day, though, and I had high hopes for this, because Kelly is the sales director there. And here's the story, and I want you to engage with me for about 3 minutes, because this is what I want your home to look like. These are the kind of experiences I hope that you can provide for your future customers. Sales director called me the night before we were going to go in on that Tuesday for my mom's experience. Her name is Kelly. Kelly's been through my training also. Kelly used to work for me, actually. So I had high expectations for Kelly and her community. So Kelly calls me the night before and she says, you're still coming tomorrow, right? And I said, I am. I can't wait. And she said, I'm looking forward to seeing you, Kelly. And she said, I can't wait to see you, Mike. But I'm also looking forward to meeting your mom. And I hear your sister's coming too. Can't wait to meet your family. And I said, great. And she said, but I want to prepare myself for the experience. You use that word tomorrow. Can you tell me a little bit about your mom so I can have my team ready to go? And I thought, well, this is different. What a great, great way to start the discovery process is to start it the night before by making that phone call. I thought that was a brilliant idea. I hadn't trained Kelly to do that, but now I train my teams to do that because it was such a brilliant idea. So I told her a little bit about my mom, a little bit about my sister, and she already knew a lot about me since we'd worked together. And she hung up the phone after about 5 minutes. She said, we're going to be ready. We're going to be ready. I can't wait. So we walk into the community the next day, and the first thing that we saw, first thing we experienced, was a great big chalkboard that had been written outside of the community. And it said, welcome to the Marlow family, in colored chalk, in calligraphy, which is hard to do. And we walk in, and there's Kelly standing there smiling. She gives me a hug. She shakes my mom's hand. She shakes my sister's hand. And she said, did you enjoy your welcome to our community, Mrs. Marlow? And my mom said, I did. And you even spelled our name right. Our name gets misspelled all the time. And Kelly said, this is Claire, our concierge. And Claire's the one that made your chalkboard this morning. And my mom said, thank you, Claire. That was so sweet of you. You see what's happening here, folks? The experience has begun. It actually started the night before with the phone call. But would they put a chalkboard up that said, welcome to the Marlow family for the next family? No. They might change the name and put the chalkboard up for the next family. That's okay. But I love the fact that they welcomed my mom that way. So immediately we went into what Kelly called the discovery room. And for 45 minutes out of the hour that we invested with her, we sat there and we chatted. And it seemed like the time went like that because other people were part of that 45 minutes also, including knock at the door 5 minutes into the discovery. Isaac showed up, and Isaac said, are you the Marlow family? Now, Isaac, 6 feet 7 inches tall, he was the chef there, had on all the chef whites. I love that look, by the way. Had the big white chef's hat on, and he knocks on the door, and he said, are you the Marlow family? And my mom turned to me, and she said, how does he know our name? And I looked at her, and again, I can't laugh. It makes me cough. She said, how does he know our name? And I said, hang in there, Mom, hang in there. We said, yeah, we're the Marlow family. And he said, well, my name's Isaac, and you must be Mrs. Marlow. And my mom said, I am Isaac. And he said, well, I'm the executive chef here at the community. And I heard through the grapevine this morning that you love blueberry pie. Is that true? And my mom said, I do love blueberry pie. In fact, I grew up on a blueberry farm. And he said, oh, in Katie's, Kentucky, I hear. She said, how do you know so much about me, Isaac? And he goes, oh, I have my ways, Mrs. Marlow. I have my ways. In honor of your visit today, I baked you a blueberry pie. And he takes the pie and he shows it to my mom. And he said, I hope this is the first of many meals that I get to cook for you. It would be my honor to do so. And my mom turned to me and she puts her hands up like, if you know the Michael Jordan shrug, anybody know that? That's kind of what my mom did. And I whispered to my mom, I said, it's like Cheers, Mom. Everybody knows your name. She was like Norm at Cheers. I knew what Kelly had orchestrated. I knew the experience that was going on. In fact, I was back in the room going, I know what they're doing. I know what they're doing. And I was loving it. My mom was loving it. She was seeing a glimpse into what her life could look like if she chose this community. Isaac said, I'm going to take this pie to the front desk so you don't have to carry it around. It's nice to meet you. Hope to see you again real soon, Mrs. Marlow. And he walked away. We actually did get up from the discovery room after 45 minutes, folks, real story. And we walked around the community. Kelly showed us a few things. I don't remember what they were, to be honest with you, because it really didn't matter. The overall experiences is what mattered. Mom was smiling and chatting with Kelly, and I was just thinking, this is awesome. This is my training in execution mode. But it wasn't even over yet, because as we were walking out, Amy comes running up, and Amy said, are you the Marlows? And my mother said in a very loud voice, in a very busy lobby, she said, I'm famous here already, aren't I? Which we all got a big laugh about. And Amy said, Mrs. Marlow, you are famous here already, and I know you miss going to church. And I hear you used to be quite the singer in the choir. And I know you don't do those things anymore, but I'm the director of activities here, and I printed off next month's activities calendar for you. Now, I went ahead and wrote your name in for the first Tuesday of the month because that's when we do our choir rehearsal. It happens right here in the lobby. It's so much fun. So I hope that you're moved in with us by next month so you can experience that. And I went ahead and wrote your name on our Saturday and Sunday churches. You don't have to go both days, but I'll be here and I'll knock on the door and make sure that you get introduced to the right people at the choir and also at church. And you'll fit right in, Mrs. Marlowe. It's so nice to meet you. And Amy disappeared also. Well, we walked out of the community. I'm crying like crazy. Kelly looks at me and she says, I looked at Kelly and I said, thank you, mouthed it to her. And she said, you're welcome, to me. And we walked out and I asked my mom, just as I had asked her 6 times before, I said, what do you think of that place? But then Mom had a weird response to me. She said, what do you mean? What did I think of that place? And I thought, right there with the blueberry pie and the Amy and her calendar. And she said, oh, that's where I'm going to live. I said, oh, you've made a decision? And she said, yeah, I think that's the place for me. Don't you agree? And I said, doesn't matter if I agree or not, Mom. I'm just so excited that you've made that decision. We had to get to community number 8. We couldn't talk about it much longer. Jumped in the car, went to community number 8. It was nothing. We got home that night and I said, Mom, are you sticking with your decision? Is it going to be community number 7? It had a name, but I'm not sharing it with you. And she said, yeah, I'm pretty excited about it, actually. What? And I said, that is such good news, Mom. We did go ahead and visit communities number 9, 10, and 11 the next weekend, but nothing compared to where my mom had already chosen in her mind. 2 weeks later, she did move into the community. She lived there for 4 years, passed away there in October 2nd, 2019, pre-pandemic. So I'm really glad because my mom was very much a germaphobe, and the pandemic wouldn't have been good for her. Let me just put it that way. But she passed away October 2nd, 2019. And I went to the community that day and told them how much I appreciated what they had done for my mom for the last 4 years. I also told them I would come back every October 2nd for the rest of my life to thank them again personally. And I've done that every October 2nd since my mom passed away. Now, 2020 and 2021 were COVID years, so I couldn't go in the community. But I hand wrote notes to all of her caregivers, called them, and said, hey, could you meet me at Mom's apartment window? And held the note up to the window so they could read it. And I cried and they cried. And unfortunately, the last time I went to Mom's community, none of her caregivers worked there anymore. I still go. I pray outside of her apartment. The executive director thinks I'm weird. That's okay. That's all right. A lot of people think I'm weird. But I pray for our industry. I pray for folks like you because the impact, the heroic measures that you do every single day matter to our customers, not just getting them to move in, but helping them live the life that they are living in our communities. Because one of the last things my mom said to me before she passed away was, thank you for letting me live here for the last 7 years. We chose well. She only lived there for 4, but hey, in her mind, it was 7. Who was I to argue? And I said, Mom, you chose well. I said, this is you. And I'm so grateful. And I'm grateful to that community, folks. And that's what an experience looks like when we do it well. And folks, at the end of the day, don't our customers deserve exactly what my mom got at community number 7? By the way, that community, and by the way, is there any part of that experience that your home is incapable of emulating? I ask that rhetorically because I know the answer to that is no. You can do all that. You can. It's going to look different. Doesn't matter. You can create a meaningful, memorable, unique experience as well. I'm leaving out lots of details because remember, that community is the one that sent my mom I Promise notes in the mail. They also sent I Promise notes to me and my sister as well because they weren't going to take any chances of losing my mom. They wanted her to move there. That was that we want you mentality that an experience creates for our customers. And I didn't get my notes via Federal Express. I just got them in regular mail. My sister did too. But what a profound impact all of that had. All right, that's enough of the story. And I went over 7 minutes. Sorry. Comments, questions about the story? All right. Let's
Thank
do the
you
last
so
two
much for
standards.
sharing your story.
Oh, thank you. It's
So
my
sorry
pleasure.
about your mom.
And again, It's something that I hope that you go, I may have to tweak that a little bit, but that's what we're doing from this point on, because that's what our customers deserve. And oh, by the way, it's really good for our business to do that. So let me do two more quick things, take a 5-minute break, and then we'll wrap up. Standard number 7 is advise. It gets short shrift because I always tell it after the blueberry pie story, which is very emotional for me to tell. Advise is not very emotional. All it is at the end of every experience, we should, thank you for that chat, we should give our customer a next step. We should advise them on what their next step should be. Sorry. I'm right. Sorry. Got confused there for a moment. We should advise them on what the next step should be. And that next step might be a face-to-face meeting if it's a phone call. It might be a medical assessment. It might be a creative follow-up idea like going and visiting them at their home. It might be of rallying the troops and having our chef bake a blueberry pie and having our activities person put a calendar with the resident's name, prospective resident's name on it to show them how much we want them in the community. The last one is to track. You should track every single part of our customer story as much as you can. And that means you've got to be a great note taker. During discovery, you need to take notes like a crazy person. You should also enter it into whatever lead management software. If you use software, heck, I don't care. You can use index cards. Track as much of the information as possible. That will allow you to not only remember the details of that family, but also to share that during standard number 4, your daily strategy meeting. You want to be able to share those details with your team selling members so that you can get their input too and get them to help you with the creative follow-up pieces of all that. So let's go back to blueberry pie for 30 seconds. Think about all the things they did. Handwritten chalkboard to welcome my mom. Having Isaac show up with the blueberry pie because the night before, Kelly had found out that my mom loves blueberry pie and lived in a community and lived in a city on a blueberry farm in Cadiz, Kentucky. Had Amy know that my mom loved to sing in the choir. So I'm going to share with her that she can continue to do it. See all these glimpses into what her life could look like? Had all the department heads write notes that said, I promise to do this and that and this other for you, Mrs. Marlow. I hope you give us the chance to prove that. Those are all the little creative follow-ups that this community did. And I've stayed in touch with Kelly. She's still a dear friend of mine. And she said something to me that I'll wrap this part up with. And she said, I said to Kelly, I said, you guys did a great job and I am grateful to you. And she said, you taught me how to do it. I said, well, I've taught thousands of people how to do it, but you did it as well as anybody, if not best of anybody. And I said, can you tell me why you do this so well, Kelly? She said, yeah, I can. She said, because we're now have the mindset at our community. We have the mindset that we don't allow residents, prospective residents, to choose us. We choose them. Think about the power in that statement. If you want your next inquirer to move to your community, you get to choose them just by doing the things like Kelly and her team did in the blueberry pie story. And standard number 6 is persistent and creative follow-up. Thanks for that question. But if you will do blueberry pie experiences for your customers, you're going to find out that you're going to get that 1 out of every 2. You're going to choose your community. Folks, I need to towel off. So let's take a 5-minute break if that's okay, and we will be back at 1:23 your time, and we'll have about 40 minutes to wrap up the day. Sound good?
Awesome. Thanks.
See you back at 5, and really 5. Yes, good. Good, thank you. So I took 2 more doses of steroid, 1 more dose of antibiotic. It's on the inhaler. So if you think I was medicated before, woo, watch out. 2 sips of McDonald's Diet Coke and 3 bites of bagel. I am ready to go, folks. I am so grateful you guys have invested this much time, and I know how hard it is to sit. I'd much rather do what I do than have to sit and listen the whole time. So thank you guys for doing that. I really